all set? Ready to roll? Mic's on. Okay, looks like we are ready to go. A minute early to call this meeting of the Ware ZBA June meeting to order at 6:59. We have 3 applications on our agenda tonight. We're going to take them as they're listed. Before we do that, I'd like everybody to introduce themselves from this side.
Sean Gaffney.
Travis Corcoran.
All right,
Matt Yuri.
Kurt Markarian.
okay. Now, the first application is a rehearing case for a variance. You guys looked at the application, it's all,
Question, can you stand around the wall? There's a lot of people out here, we can't hear you.
everybody for the first case,
What's the first case?
the first application here?
The first one is Isley Allen Trust.
Is that who's outside?
I don't know.
Okay, well, we got a packed house.
Let's put it,
Before we start, I've gone over the application, you guys have gone over the application. Do I hear a motion to accept the application?
I make a motion to accept the application as complete.
I second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the application, which means basically it's in order, and we're ready to proceed. No discussion? Any discussion?
None.
Being none, all those in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes?
Yes.
5-0, okay, now we can deal with our crowd. Who's here to speak to this first case, first application? Take your spot. Wait,
Who do you want to hear from?
I want to hear from the applicant.
There you go.
That's him.
That's me,
Okay.
I'm Doug Ilsley.
Yeah.
Doug
You're
Ilsley.
speaking for yourself.
I'm speaking for myself right now, yeah. I'm gonna have Naomi Bolton is gonna,
Before you start, now, is there anybody outside that wants to be in here to hear what's going on? Looks like we have standing room only. I guess that's just how we got to deal with
I'm
it.
here for the second, we're here for the second case. We could give up our seats.
If you don't mind, that'd be great.
We'll try to make sure you get him back.
We appreciate it, yeah.
And
Anybody else outside that,
should we suggest that there's a bit of wall space over here?
yeah, anybody wants to stand over here, that's fine too. Just want to make sure everybody's accommodated. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Go ahead and go over your application. Basically, read each one.
I've got my sister-in-law Naomi's gonna present my case.
Okay.
She knows more about this than I do.
I hope.
Good evening. My name is Naomi Bolton. I'm speaking as a resident. I live at 42 Norris Road in Ware. I am Doug's sister-in-law, just for the record. So I know there's been a little bit of conversation here at the office in regards to how we got back here. So I guess I'll just
Right.
It was originally heard on March 4th, and at that time, Doug provided a potential purchaser with a written permission to apply for the variance. The purchaser who had the permission couldn't be here, so he turned it over to someone else, but he really didn't have a right to, because it should have come from Doug. So when they realized and watched the March meeting, as to what went on and who was speaking, he didn't have permission to speak. Therefore, they exercised their 30-day appeal period and asked if they could rehear, which was granted on April 1st, which is why we're here.
Okay.
Okay?
Great.
I am going to provide one extra map that was not in there to you guys. What it is, it's a larger part of the tax map, but it's important for you to all know where we came from. And that shows the large tract of parcel that was subdivided in 2009, known as the Nelson subdivision. There was also in the 70s, Mr. Towns subdivided the lots in red. In the 80s, Mr. Ilsley did the lots in black. And in green, Mr. Bovier did those along River Road. So basically, all has one of...
Oh, excellent.
Thank you.
Little boundary markers.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll get the application. And just, so we're looking to have permission for a single-family home built on an 11.23 acre lot. And the reason for the variance is to enjoy the same rights as all the others have had and been able to do in the neighborhood, whether they received just a building permit because they fronted on a Class 5 road, or whether they went through the variance process. Those on Huntington Hill went through the variance process at different times to get building permits. Mr. Ilsley's lot is the last lot with not one home on it. Everybody around him has a home and had the same enjoyment that he's looking to seek from this board. Huntington Hill is a Class 6 road, which means it's town-owned, just not town-maintained. If you look at Article 17.1.1, I need some water. Article 17.1.1 of the zoning ordinance used to say, private and Class 6 roads, you couldn't have a building permit. In the warrant article last year, they took away the private road part, so Class 6 road still comes here, which is why he's here. If you're all set, I'll go through with number 1. Number 1 says the variance will not be contrary to public interest because the variance will not be contrary to public interest because the proposed use is in keeping with the rural and low-density character of the area, where access by a non-maintained road is not uncommon. Granting of the variance will not negatively impact public safety, traffic flow, or neighboring properties. The applicant is agreeable to sign a liability disclaimer acknowledging that the town bears no responsibility for maintenance, repair, emergency access on this road. It says private road, but it's not. This commitment ensures that the variance does not place an undue burden on public resources and aligns with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance. 2 says, please describe how the spirit of the ordinance is observed. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the proposed use does not conflict with the general purpose of the zoning ordinance, which is to promote orderly development, protect property values, and ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the public. The project is in harmony with the character of the surrounding neighborhood, which includes similar properties with access by a non-town-maintained road. It does not introduce a use or intensity of development that is out of scale for the area. Additionally, they're committed to ensuring safe access and maintaining the road privately, and they're willing again to sign a liability waiver acknowledging the town has no responsibility for road upkeep. As such, no public rights will be harmed and the essential rural character of the neighborhood will be preserved. 3, please describe how substantial justice will be done. Substantial justice is done because granting the variance allows the applicant reasonable use of their property without causing harm to the general public. The proposed use is consistent with nearby properties and does not pose any risk of public health, safety, or welfare. Denying the variance would place an unnecessary burden on the applicant, while approval results in no negative impact on the surrounding area of town or town services. The benefit to the applicant, being able to access and responsibly use their land, is not outweighed by the detriment to the public, especially given the applicant's willingness to assume full responsibility for some road maintenance and liability. 4, please describe how the values of the surrounding properties are not diminished. The values of surrounding properties are not diminished because the proposed use is in keeping with the character, scale, and type of development already present in the area. It will not introduce excessive noise, traffic, or visual impacts, and will not be constructed and maintained in a manner consistent with neighboring properties, and will be constructed, sorry, not. Access via a non-town maintained road is common in the area and has not negatively affected property values. Furthermore, the applicant's agreement to take full responsibility for liability and maintenance ensures that there's no added burden to the town or nearby owners, thereby protecting the overall desirability and stability of the neighborhood. 5, Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship because this property has unique conditions that distinguish it from others in the area. Specifically, it's accessed by a non-town maintained road, which limits development options despite being a legally created lot. Unlike nearby properties with direct access from town-maintained roads, this parcel's access is restricted due to the status of the roadway, despite the road being passable and used by other properties. Additionally, there may be natural features such as uneven terrain and wet areas that further restrict buildable space. These conditions are not self-created and make it difficult to use the property in a manner consistent with the zoning ordinance without relief. As such, applying the ordinance strictly would prevent reasonable use of the land. 1I, owing to the special conditions identified above, please indicate how no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application. Owing to the special conditions identified above, there's no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the ordinance and its application to the property, because the ordinance is intended to ensure safe, accessible, and orderly development, particularly along maintained roads. However, in this case, the property is already legally created, safely accessible by a non-town maintained road that serves other similar properties in the area. The applicant is willing to take on responsibility for road maintenance and liability, which addresses any public safety or financial concerns. Therefore, applying the ordinance rigidly in this instance would not serve the public interest, but would instead prevent reasonable use of a uniquely situated parcel without offering a corresponding public benefit. 2, owing to the special conditions identified above, please indicate how the proposed use is a reasonable one. Owing to the special conditions identified above, the proposed use is a reasonable one because the property was legally created, a lot intended for residential use consistent with surrounding parcels. However, its access by a non-town maintained road creates a unique limitation not shared by other nearby lots with town maintained access. The zoning restriction as applied would effectively prohibit any use of the land despite its suitability for development and its location in a zone which use is allowed. The proposed use, a single-family home, does not exceed the density of nearby uses and will not burden resources, as the applicant is prepared to share some maintenance and waive the liability to the town. Denying the use would render the property functionally unusable, which is an unreasonable outcome under the circumstances. There's 2 more. Please describe the special conditions of the property to distinguish it from other properties in the area. Special conditions of the property that distinguish from other properties in the area include its access being limited to a non-maintained road, which creates a barrier to development not experienced by nearby properties with frontage on town-maintained roads. Although, yeah,
I'm going to stop you just for a moment.
thank you.
Not a problem. Since you've got 5 I and II
Yep.
completed,
Okay.
so sectionally.
You don't need B?
Essentially, you really don't need to
Okay.
go into B unless you really want to, because you're.
I'm just regurgitating the same thing.
Understood.
Yep.
Understood. I just don't want you to read more than you need to.
Okay.
Based on what you have in here, you have the information there, kind of makes the B moot.
Okay.
So, unless,
I totally agree.
All right, well,
That you
they
don't have to work
they
too
fill
hard.
out, they fill out everything just in
Yeah,
case.
understood, and that's okay. I'd rather have more information than less.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Comfortable with.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. So I've read through the application. There is an opportunity after listening for a rebuttal.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to close with this at this time, with reserve the right to come back. Again, it's an 11.23 acre lot, which was the remainder of several subdivisions that go back to the 70s. Every lot around this lot has been developed and there's a home on it. You can all see that. That's what the big map was all about. And this application is merely asking for the same enjoyment that every other owner has, is to build one single-family home. There would be no subdivision, there can't unless there's a Class 5 road. So they're said multiple times, they're willing to sign a liability and release form. They have had the DPW director out there, so there's an understanding of what they have to do, which would be the next step with the selectmen if you so grant the variance.
Right.
Because it is the selectmen's road to take it from there.
Okay. Are there any other questions for them?
not for them at this point. I do have questions, but not for the applicant.
All right, we reserve the right to come back. if we have to.
Absolutely.
Yep, thank you.
Have a rebuttal anyway.
You've got one. I have one general clarification.
Okay, are there any
Got a
other,
question from the right.
Yeah, Malcolm, I just want to just confirm just on the map that was provided, Naomi, so Huntington Road comes off of River Road. Is that Huntington that goes all the way around and reconnects back to River Road?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, thank you. And then is it all Classics Road from end to end? Okay, thank you.
River Road to Bart.
Bartlett to River Road,
Bart, that whole section is plus.
or Bart Clough.
Bart Clough to River
Bart
Road.
Clough to River is 6.
River Road to-
right,
Bottom left-hand corner of the curve by Huntington is where the Bartlett Drive stops.
Yeah,
Bart Clough, I'm sorry, and then it comes up through.
okay. So this whole loop is Class 6, so the entirety of the Nelson development
Yeah,
all the way through?
that's got some road to be built with a road. It's on paper now. I'm sorry. I should do this.
I just want to make sure they understand. Because it only says,
So,
what you got there,
so this part here is Bart Clough.
right?
This is Huntington, comes out to River Road. This here, you see the 65, 8 all the way around to 21. This is the potential subdivision that when gets built out will have a new road that accesses to River Road. This is not built yet.
So
okay,
right now, is there a road between here and there?
There is a road.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Wasn't
goes
sure if it was
down to
paper
River
or
Road.
real.
No one,
Right.
well, four-wheelers have been using it, because
Okay.
there was evidence of that when people were out there.
And that road
So-
goes all the way across and down to here?
Yeah, so
Great,
the
thanks.
last home is right, there's a home here and a home here that were granted variances.
And do
On
they,
68.
and they access it up this way, is that
Yeah,
right?
And
Okay.
there's a home on 65.
Mhm.
And this is the lot.
Right,
These all have access off River Road.
got it. Thank you.
thanks, thank you. Any other questions for the? Yeah, go forward. Okay, are there any approving abutters who would like to speak to this? Being none. Disapproving abutters. Who wants to be first?
So I will. Ray Menard, 1015 River Road. I'm a little confused, because when we were at the first meeting, the gentleman that was up and speaking, actually, I believe Mr. Markarian, sorry,
No, you did a great job.
asked him if he had permission to speak, and he was very adamant that he had permission to speak. And in the end, again, Mr. Markarian said, why don't we put this into a delay or whatever the legal term for that was, and the gentleman was adamant that he did not want to do that. So RSA 67-2 does allow for a rehearing. I'm not sure oops is one of the legal terms that would be.
If I may, we had the hearing to decide if there could be a rehearing. Your point is perfectly well taken, it's understood, it was hashed out, I had those concerns, but that meeting did wrap up, and a vote was taken, and that vote was, yes, a rehearing is allowed. So we're past that point at this point.
Okay, so then we still, as abutters, would have the right to appeal that through the court system.
Say that again?
We haven't actually voted on accepting
No.
the variance at this point, so.
But I
right
think it-
now, if we do, yes, you would have that right.
Yes, for the variance, if we were to grant the variance, yes, you are absolutely, yeah.
But if your
absolutely.
question is, could you appeal our decision?
No.
Okay, great,
No.
for the, yeah.
And again,
Right.
as last time, I have no heartburn with the house being built. It's the river that runs at the back of my house, right, and my neighbor's house, that's the problem, right?
So let me ask you this. There's not a house there right now, correct?
Correct,
Yet you still have a river that runs through your property.
correct.
So what is your argument against the house being built?
Well, there's going to have to be less permeable space up there. If they do something at the top of the road, that's going to push more water down the road, logically.
In theory, but not necessarily.
Well, it runs downhill, so something has to be done.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but again, it's still theory. Water does run downhill, I agree with you. But if things are done correctly, it will not affect downhill from where you're at. I was on a planning board prior to this in Sunapee. I know very well what the requirements are for someone that's gonna build, as far as what the planning board is going to ask for. And that'll be one of the things that they will verify, that it is not going to negatively affect the properties in the surrounding area. To that, though, if you already have a river there, the burden of proof would still be on you that this house has actually been a detriment greater than what you already have. And I mean, with the weather that we've had this month alone, this past month, I've seen water in places I've never seen water at my house. So
Absolutely.
I'm one of 2 houses on my road, and I'm on the top. So, you know, I understand your concern, but again, it's not a matter of the house going in and being an issue. You already have an existing condition. So that it's not really an argument that it's going to be a problem.
Well, I would argue that point 3 or whatever it is, where it indicates it will not negatively impact neighbors and that, I'm not sure that's a true statement.
So basically, what you're trying to say is, how is substantial justice is done, because the benefits of the applicant must not be outweighed by the harm to the general public. That's what you're talking
Correct.
about. Understood. So I just want to make sure that
Yep.
it gets on record, that's what you're referring to. So-
I can jump in for a moment, just a couple
Absolutely.
of clarifying things. One is, you had an open question, which is, if the variance were granted, the abutters would then have the right to sue to overturn that. The abutters would. It used to be that abutters or members of the public at large who were affected could. There was a bill, which in my role as a state rep, I actually voted against, but it passed anyway, which limited the scope of that, so it is only the abutters. So the definition of abutter is shares a property line or directly across the road, et cetera, so that's something to be aware of. And second, there was some discussion about the burden of proof. The burden of proof in a potential lawsuit would indeed fall on the plaintiff in that lawsuit. But at this meeting, the default is reversed, so the burden of persuasion lies with the applicant. So unless the applicant persuades, then the board is instructed to take as the default the assumption that the rule should hold.
Thanks.
Dan Levy from 1025 River Road. I'm gonna give you guys a handout with some pictures.
We can always share if we need to.
Well, one for you. I'll pass it down in a moment.
Would it be okay if I asked an ethics question to start this with? With the fact that there was a town official speaking on behalf of the applicant at the last meeting that is married to that family, is that not a gray area right there? Especially, let's add into that.
I can answer that very easily.
Okay.
When she came up to speak, she came up as a resident.
Okay.
And not as a town official. So, and anybody,
Yeah.
so.
No, I get
there's no
that.
conflict of
I just
interest.
wanted to ask.
Yep.
If you look at the pictures on the first page, you can see that the water on the first picture in the top left, the green area at the top of the road is where the tree line stops and the road goes out into the open.
When were
That's-
these pictures taken?
These were probably last week, but this is spring water. This runs no matter what the weather, even during the drought, there was water flowing down this road. The second picture, where the prior applicant that was here speaking was talking about the property leveling off. You can see the property marker at the top of the property showing tons of standing water. And then after that, there's another downhill section where you see the other property marker, which has flowing water going downhill. And it is completely downhill from that state. There's a lot of water that comes down that road. On the second page, I'm saying this from a concerned citizen, I'm not speaking for my neighbor. The water that's leaching from the road into his driveway is going into River Road during the winter. That's creating ice on River Road, and that is a safety hazard for the public.
So for these second pictures, where is this in relation?
The River Road on the first picture,
The intersection of Huntington Hill and River Road.
Yeah, so is it right here?
yeah,
At that-
1031 River Road is that driveway.
Okay.
Sorry. You can see in the picture where the ice is going out into the road. And the second picture shows over a foot of ice on the end of his driveway from the road. It's all from water coming down the road in the winter with no rain. And just to address the last applicant's statement of redirecting the water off of a town road onto their own property, there's a last page is a topographical LiDAR map that shows the direction.
When were these pictures done?
That was this past winter.
Yeah, but when?
The ice ones?
Yeah.
January? That's it.
Because I know again, in my case, where I live, when we had the torrential downpours in the winter, Reservoir Drive became exactly like this,
Yeah.
but I've not had that
So-
before.
March 4th.
I've lived there for 8 years.
Yep.
That driveway's done that 4 out of those 8 years.
So, again, though, you're also looking at,
The real thick ice is January 29th. The ice going out into River Road was March 4th.
okay, which I can see that happening with the spring thaw.
So there's no denying you have a water problem.
Yeah.
Can you say that the water can't be managed?
If it's all downhill, where's it gonna go? You're gonna build a trench down the whole road?
The problem is
have
the
ditches and
culvert that
culverts
runs
for it.
underneath my driveway freezes. And then it all just comes up over into my driveway, into the road.
Was the culvert in your driveway, was that installed by the DPW, or was it installed by the?
It was there when
Yeah.
we bought the house.
So this is, I'll say that there's a potential that they undersize that culvert then, because.
No, it's not. It's 15.
Nothing, please, not from out there. If you want to have something to say, you got to do it up here. We can't have back and forth all over the place.
So not only that, I don't have pictures of it, but my lower yard in the front of my house is wet all the time. Even during the drought, it was wet, coming off of that road.
You bought the house anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Would you-
Eldon Towns, 111, Eldon Towns,
Oh.
111 Huntington Hill.
Thanks, just for the record.
Yeah, so to, I guess, address some concerns I've heard from Mr. Markarian. And let's go back to the first meeting on the type of land that's there. It's like 2 feet to bedrock everywhere. So you've got a lot of impermeable soils, and you being on planning board, if you know what I'm talking about, it's hard to swallow that water with detention ponds, swales, and things like that. And with that being said, roof lines, roads, lawns create water speed and velocity, which you don't get with floor. You end up with time for water to go in the ground. So when you develop land, you end up with water speed, and that's a part of erosion control, is keeping that slow. So, but I do have an idea that might help both parties, people that are considered, concerned about the water, and then they also want to build on that land.
I would like the board to consider a conditional approval for access to be strictly from the River Road side up, and have the engineering efforts and construction of drainage and roadway be invested into the problem area that everybody seems to be complaining about. He wants to sign that document saying he'll do that. That would be one way to hold him to it, and put a water bar at the top between my property and his, right there, and shed the water onto his land and let him deal with it.
Your property is what, not by street address, but by tax lot number?
68,
68, thank you.
right next to Ilsley's.
Got it, thank you.
So that way the water can get discharged onto their property, which technically you can't discharge road water onto any property if it's your own. But I believe at this level, a conditional approval, and at the planning board level, something can be worked out. So things can be, addressed at both parties, if this board decides to give them a variance. And it would address the road agent's concerns, and it wouldn't strictly keep the road agent and the taxpayer from fixing any potential road damage that already happens down there on the shoulder and at that driveway where you are. Actually, if it's done correctly, it might improve it. But I am really hard to believe that the ignorance at the first meeting could be rewarded here tonight. Your application is pretty straightforward with, I think I saw you highlighted in yellow 3 times to provide stating documents, such as like on your checklist that you provide for every applicant to go through, supporting documents. Even on item number 4, it says you should provide a site plan. In quotes, survey plans are always preferred, or even a well hand-drawn sketch or accepted showing slopes, topography, things like that.
If I can interrupt for a second.
Go ahead.
I'm extremely sympathetic to the point you're making, but we had the meeting where a vote was taken, and the vote
Yeah.
was to rehear it.
Yep, well, so, and also at that meeting, I know you guys voted to rehear this, but I believe that in my memory and a couple of the meetings that I've always watched, the chairman is always trying to look out for the applicant if he knows or feels that it's not going to go in their favor. I think a hammer over the head was almost not enough for the applicant to withdraw his application at that time, to continue it and come back with new evidence, which I haven't seen any substantial evidence of water drainage concerns that we all have. All you've been given is a subdivision lot plan. So there's no engineered drainage plan presented tonight that I would consider or expected to see tonight for substantial evidence of the water problem for the road and the abutters. So I don't know what evidence that the board is considering changing their vote on what they voted from the first time around, which was basically the water issue. It wasn't an applicant issue. Mr. Markarian asked twice. You guys hammered that out, so this looks pretty foolish to me, this meeting.
Okay,
So, all right, thank you.
thank you. Any other disapproving of butters? Being,
Hi, I'm Beth Salerno. I live at 1105 River Road, and I don't know my tax lot number, I'm sorry. And I'm really grateful we don't have water problems. So we moved in 2000, apparently the house had French drains, so the water comes down our back hill and goes around. we border this property at the very far back of our property. We're on River Road and we abut to the back. So in the far back of our property, I think, is the road that's being talked about. So we don't have that particular road problem. I didn't come to the first one. I read the minutes of it, and the lack of clarity about that person's lack of clarity about how to go through the process was what made me really worried. Because if they didn't know how the process worked, I was quite worried they might not know how the rules for building a house up there might work, or dealing with the planning board. And I didn't want to experience all the same water problems that everyone else is experiencing, because right now everything works fine. I'm very sympathetic to someone bought a property and wants to put a house on it. That's what we do, right? That's why you buy a property. But if you're buying a property that needs a variance, I'd like to see the evidence that you understand you're asking for a rule change, right? That you bought a property knowing you couldn't put a house on it without clarity of how you were going to deal with the issues. And that's the part that makes me a little concerned, is I don't currently have difficulties. I sympathize with the people who do, but I'd prefer not to have them. And while anybody could put a house, and I could then have problems, and I wouldn't have any right to say anything if they didn't need a variance, they do need a variance. And I'm really grateful. Thank you for the thought that you would have a liability waiver. That won't necessarily, it'll help the town, but it won't help the abutters if there turns out to be a problem, because then we have to deal with the individual. And we have to go find the individual and say, do you remember at town you said there wasn't going to be a problem? Now there's a problem. How do we figure this out? So that's my worry, was if you buy a property knowing you need a variance, you have to be able to make a really good case that a variance is appropriate and will not have a negative impact on the surrounding area. And so far, I haven't heard that that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other non-approving abutters? Public at large, boards, committees.
Hi. I'm Eva Noakes, 1031 River Road,
Okay.
the same house as the water problem.
Are you in a butter?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm at the 1031, the frozen driveway one.
okay.
So, yeah, I was also expecting some more evidence this time around, because you all asked for that the first hearing, and said, will there be a business plan for the water, things like this. So I was kind of coming here expecting to look at that evidence and make some kind of decision. So that's where I'm floundering a little bit now on how this decision will be different. The other thing that changed dramatically from the first hearing was about they needed to be able to sell this land. And that was the hardship, was that they couldn't sell it, if I remember correctly. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly. But it was a buyer who came here wanting to buy the property. And that's who came here. Now we're saying we want to they want to be able to live on this property, and they'll take all the liability and everything. But if that did happen, I would want to know, does that liability go to the next owner? How long does this carry on for? If they put a house on there and then sell it, are the new owners responsible for taking care of all this? And it's not really a question, but I wanted to make that point. I was expecting to see some more evidence on how the water would either be helped or not worse by doing this.
Let me partially address that, maybe, if I can.
Yep.
Part of our problem sometimes with the zoning board is that we're not the planning board. And a lot of times we get people asking questions or making presentations and expecting some sort of decision from us that the planning board has to make. That's not what we're here to do. But we do want to hear about that stuff so that we have some intelligent decisions.
Yep.
And that's why a lot of times we'll get a variance request, and there will be some particulars involved, and we will put a stipulation. just generally speaking, would be, for variance is granted, with approval from the planning board. As
Okay.
far as what they need to go through in their process. And if they don't meet the planning board requirements, then the variance wouldn't be useful.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for
Okay.
explaining that.
So, we have a hard time with,
Yep.
there's a lot of overlap back and forth and.
Oh, and you're dealing with people like me who don't understand the process, so thank you for explaining. I appreciate
Does
it.
anybody want to add to that, or you?
No, I think you explained it very well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It would be time for an rebuttal from the applicant.
Rebuttal.
You have anything to say?
So just making a few notes from the back of the room. I don't know where to start. So, guess we all know water runs downhill. We've all talked about it, we've heard about it. So we pulled some elevations for properties because water does go downhill. Mr. Towns even made a note that water speed when land is developed. So the elevation difference, the only one I could come up with was Mr. Towns' home, because there is no address for the piece of property that we're talking about. That's at 634 feet, and then if you go, everybody's downhill from there. So 1025 River Road is 66 feet lower. 1031 is 89 feet lower, and Mr. Menard's probably the closest, 23 feet. And then last time we heard from someone completely across River Road at North Huntington Hill about the water and the runoff, who abuts the flood control, and there was a 187-foot difference between where this property is and down to that property, and it would have to wash out River Road. So water flows down, but you also get saturated, so water comes up too, so it puddles and things like that. Just a fun fact, over the years, as you take a mature tree out, trees consume between 10 and 150 gallons of water a day. So if you start clear cutting and taking trees out and taking the absorption out, for a 1-foot diameter trunk tree, you've got 120 gallons that's gonna go somewhere. So, this land is in current use, there's 11.23. I would suspect that they would keep the 10 acres in current use and build on the 1.23. The comment about a condition coming from access by River Road, Huntington Hill is Class 6, you can go on either end of it. So to put a condition that they can only access by the River Road end is kind of a little overstretch in our opinion. The other thing is, 1031 River Road is quite a ways off of River Road, and he was developed in 2003. The home was developed way back in the back part of the lot, and come time for an occupancy permit, they had to go to Mr. Ilsley to get a half an acre in order to occupy the home, not these people that are in it. So out of the goodness of his heart, he gave .53 acres to 1031 so they can have a compliant house to live in with an occupancy with the abutters, with the current standards. The one across the road, Lot 70. Lot 70 had a variance in 1996 to put a mobile home there. There was a 12 by 60 mobile home which took up 700 square feet. 2021, fast forward, somebody buys it, takes the mobile home out, puts in a 1,465 square foot, 2-story, 3-bedroom home. So that didn't come here either. So maybe some of the water came from disturbing 720 square feet to 1,465 square feet, which constitutes a problem. Mr. Towns went and got a variance, just like this whole process, had road upgrades, had a liability waiver and everything else. Same thing with Lot 70, and the same thing with the Cushmans did as well. The one other thing that, I also have pictures from today at 3 o'clock of what the road looked like today after all the rain. There's 6 pictures here from River Road, walking up through at different intervals, and one of them shows the clearing to Mr. Townsend's home. And you can see the clearing where this lot would be.
We'll get a bunch here, I'll pass them out.
No, there's 6, but they're staged up the road. It says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, okay, so it's a packet, gotcha.
So you come from River Road, you took a picture, went a little bit more, took a picture, went a little bit more, took a picture. Picture 5 is the clearing you're gonna see is the opening to Mr. Townsend's piece. And then, I do have one more, there was another comment, about how ludicrous it was here, but, and everybody's carries on about the water and the mud, but I'm gonna also share with you some Facebook snags from a private event at a neighbor's house that involved trucks, mud, and everything else, that created these channels that will fastly run them. Look at the Facebook.
Yeah.
That's on a face-
different property. Good try.
Well, it's abutting to them.
No, it's not.
Naomi,
Okay. It's all right.
you still are going to the planning board for this, right?
You have to, it still would have to see
Right.
planning board oversight and selectmen oversight, correct?
Right, so I guess what I want to do is kind of move forward.
All right, sorry.
A lot of this stuff is
Yep.
relevant to a certain degree, but
Yeah, so there's,
heavy on one
there's,
side.
there's conditions, but to make someone come in from River Road
Yeah,
is on a town-maintained, or town-owned, not maintained road that anybody can pass, and right now, if you look at those pictures, they're using it now. So,
right.
just,
Questions at all?
more?
Don't know much more, I guess.
I think we-
So you will, you won't have a problem with the planning board process?
no, the town's gonna have to talk about the roadway too, the selectmen are gonna have to
Okay.
talk about it. Because there's a process of building on a
So,
class 6
guys-
road. There's a process of building on a class 6 road, that process is on town, the flow chart.
Right,
And if it was on a subdivision that was created, then it goes down this different path. But because of the zoning article, the way it's written,
yeah,
so,
thank you. I believe we're all set. We're gonna close this. Okay, what do you guys have to say? Anything at all?
A bunch. Okay.
Okay, we're gonna go to the first article.
So, were you inviting general discussion before we jumped in point by point?
Well,
Or no? Did you want to?
no, probably.
Okay, great.
not. I would ask that any of the general discussion be targeted.
Great.
To a particular point, and that's a
Great.
good question, so, yeah. Do I hear a motion to accept number 1?
I so motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve Article
Wait,
1.
Approve for discussion. I always got hung up on this.
Well, no, the motion was to approve.
Okay.
So now we're gonna have discussion.
Okay, great, I'm sorry.
Moved and seconded, now we're gonna have discussion. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
So, specific prong 1, but it's gonna get a little bit more general.
Yeah.
Under Gray v. Sedell, 143, New Hampshire 327, case dating from 1999, it doesn't matter if the variance would cause a benefit, we do have to ask, though, would the variance cause a harm? And additionally, the guide for zoning boards state a couple of times that the applicant has the burden of persuasion, which is a way of saying basically that we should, not assume any of their things until they've proven to the contrary. So it's sort of guilty until proven innocent. In this case, we've had several disapproving abutters who spoke and suggested that there would be harm. And there was legitimate question saying, okay, I understand that there's flooding now, but do you have an argument that there is going to be more flooding? And I get the distinction. But I think that Mr. Towns spoke very well to this when he spoke about development accelerating water flow, and the speed of the water flow matters. And so that, sort of 2 sentences right there is enough to make me say, okay, great. How much, water flow, how much faster? These are valid questions. And, they're rebuttable by the applicant saying, hey, the driveway is only, 290 square feet. It slopes this way. And there's, we don't need a $50,000 engineering study to convince us. In the first hearing, one thing I was basically begging the applicant's delegate for was saying, hey, do you want to hold off a month, come back? We don't need a study, but go to Granite View, the GIS site, and just print out a 2-foot contour map or LiDAR or show something. And we
If
did.
it was agreed that that should be reheared, then I'm not sure reaching back to that.
I'm not saying that that is relevant here, but I'm saying
Why would you stick to relevant?
because it's an example. So, all right, let me restart the sentence. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it before, but the kinds of evidence that would be interesting in this case would be a 2-foot contour map or LiDAR or something from the applicant to help establish their persuasion. The applicant this time did not present any evidence that I saw to suggest that the runoff would be controlled or that the runoff wouldn't be increased. And I did find Mr. Towns' speech on this to be compelling. So I'm almost
You
wrapping.
think that's within our purview?
I do, because the default is that the applicant has the burden of persuasion, and the applicant did not persuade me, whereas the disapproving abutters did a pretty good job of persuading me.
So, but to your point, right, they have the job of persuading you.
Yes.
However, normally, when they come here, they don't know necessarily what is going to be said by disapproving
Right.
butters. So they may not be prepared
Okay.
to do that.
Well-
So it's kind of hard to anticipate what is needed in every case.
Right.
So.
I agree with you on the normal case, but in this case, the applicants had an advantage, which is they got to watch the entire 1-hour hearing where we said what would persuade us.
Understood. Different applicant, though.
Okay, so maybe they didn't watch.
Well, and we also made the distinction not too long ago, that there's a crossover of zoning and planning. So the concerns could not only be valid, but could also be substantiated through an analysis of people who are qualified to review that. Right, so as much as I can appreciate what Mr. Towns is saying, as much as Mr. Ilsley, both positions seem plausible, right? But not able to qualify, and I think that our applicants deserve qualified review.
Okay.
Right, so I'm not qualified to look at a water drainage plan.
Okay.
Well said. That's the thing we need to try to focus on, is that what we have is a zoning board issue. They have a buildable lot.
That's not clear.
In theory.
We'll find out at the end of the vote.
But, yeah, not our vote. But that's part of it. Yeah, the part of the process is getting the variance, okay, yes. But we're not the ones to decide the water management issues. So we can't, or we shouldn't let that persuade us too much, because we're here to find reasonable use. And a residential use is reasonable.
I think when you said we shouldn't let it persuade us, that's actually reversed. I don't think that it was Mr. Towns or any of the other disapproving applicants who persuaded us against this. I think we are statutorily told to begin with the assumption that the zoning code should stand, and the applicant has the duty to persuade us that their deviation from the law would not cause any harm. And so I'm just saying, I, for one, was not so persuaded.
They're, okay, I'll let that rest. I do think we need to make sure we focus on the zoning issues and not the planning, because I would recommend that we do have a stipulation.
Okay.
That if this variance is granted,
So,
it will need
yeah.
pass planning board approvals.
So I'm gonna ask a question,
Yeah.
and that is, what of prong one is not,
What is
What was all of that addressed to? Is that,
What-
how does that fit under prong one?
how does what they've written
Right.
not meet the requirement of prong one?
Specifically under Gravis et al., 143, New Hampshire 327, dating from 1999, the applicant, under prong one, needs to persuade us that the variance would not cause a harm. And I'm saying the applicant did not persuade me.
Okay, so that you're just not persuaded that, okay,
Yep.
that's the part I
Yep.
missed, and I apologize for missing it.
And perhaps, I mean, if other people feel otherwise, I'd be happy to hear what the applicant said, what data they presented that did persuade you, because maybe I'll be persuaded as well.
Fair enough. Any other?
Well, I'm looking at it, not necessarily what's presented by the applicant, but what we have in our ordinances as well, right? And it is very clear that when you look at the map, and you read that first statement, the proposed use must not conflict with the purpose of the ordinance, and that it must not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, threaten public health, safety, or welfare, or otherwise injure public rights.
And it's very specifically the threatened public health, safety, or welfare, or public rights that I'm calling this to. We've got abutters who are saying, I have a reasonable concern that I might get 50% more water.
No, don't add percentages in there, because that was never stated.
Okay.
They may be concerned about more water,
Okay,
but,
valid.
but they also stated they already have existing water.
Right.
It's not something that's new. It's
Well-
always been there.
Yep. I mean, it's certainly not something that's new because the development
Correct.
hasn't taken place yet.
So you look at all these houses.
Yep.
That were permitted to be built on a Class 6 road. And I imagine the majority of these, depending on when they were built, had to have a variance for them.
So is your argument that because variances have been issued in the past, that there is precedence, and thus we should follow that precedent today?
That is my argument, yes.
Okay.
That is
That is
not
not in keeping with the
necessarily-
law.
Good.
Sorry.
That's fine.
We treat each application as its
Understood.
its own animal.
Understood.
We're not supposed to act on precedent.
Okay.
However, it's hard to erase that. I still look at this like there's a lot of planning issues, and there are concerns about an exacerbated water issue. I really haven't been convinced that it can't be managed.
We have no basis to
And
comment
that's-
either way.
Yeah, and that really doesn't
Right.
speak to, I think, those concerns are valid, but do they speak to the public interest specifically?
Sure, they speak to the public interest that would be addressed at the planning board.
Agreed.
And to
Okay.
your point about the, if I may add, about the, providing justification, right? Providing the proof, so to speak.
Right, the burden of persuasion.
The persuasion, so what's persuasive is, for me, is not so much the precedent of other variances, but there is an inherent observation that has a justworthiness to it, which is out of an area of this entire size, one house on an 11-acre parcel in the middle of that, it was okay for every one of these other ones on a Class 6 road. The proof, that starts to substantiate within itself that it's at least
Right.
worth further exploration.
I think that is a relevant point, and I think that might be one of the other prongs, but I don't think that that fits under the public interest. I mean, if in the public interest, 5 people have already cut down redwood trees, and everyone is complaining the view is getting worse and worse, and then a 6th person, says, there's an argument about fairness, I get that, but prong 1 is, would doing one more of these help or contribute to the public interest? And I think it would not.
Yeah. Any other discussion?
No.
Let's bring this to vote. All those in favor?
Yes.
No?
No.
Yes.
And a yes from me, so that passes 3-2. Do I hear a motion to accept prong 2?
I so motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
What, I would ask, is the spirit of the ordinance that says that you cannot develop on a Class 6 road? And we get these more or less every month, and this is a fight
It's
I
an
take every
interesting
month.
question, and it's just, yeah.
I mean,
What is the spirit of the ordinance?
that is an ordinance that was proposed by the planning board and voted in by a majority of Ware voters. So what did they all mean? What were they thinking that ordinance meant?
I was asking that same question because when you look at the definition of a private road, it's a Class 6 road.
I believe a private road is what, a Class 6 road that is owned by someone other than the town?
Correct.
Okay.
But so it, you know, but what is the difference?
Right.
If the town isn't maintaining that Class 6 road, but they own it,
Mm-hmm.
versus a privately owned Class 6 road that is maintained by the people that are on that
Mm-hmm.
stretch, there's really not a difference other than who owns it.
Okay.
So we're defining a private road being Class 6 as not, basically not town-owned. So I've been struggling with that one, because it's like, well, really, there is not, you can't define a Class 6 road. There's a definition for Class 6 road, whether who owns it, it doesn't matter, it's a Class 6 road. But yet, the ordinance determined that if it's town-owned, it's different than privately owned.
So that's basically the letter of the ordinance,
Right.
so to speak.
Yeah.
What we have to deal with, number 2, here is the spirit of the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience, again, I'm not the expert, but part of the reason we have an ordinance in the first place is to control development. Not stop it, but control it. Because there was a time when everybody was doing whatever the heck they wanted, and it was a lot of problems for a lot of people. So we had the ordinance to stop it, temporarily stop it, but to manage development. And I think that, for me, that's where my spirit of the ordinance comes in. We're not here to stop anything, we're here to control it.
So to clarify, your thought is that, if you're,
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
and I just want to make sure I follow. The thought of the ordinance that forbids development on Class 6 roads is it's intended to put a roadblock so that each person has to come here, get permission, we say yes, just like the last 30, and it puts a 1-month delay in, so that was the intent?
More or less, but I would say get permission or not.
Okay.
You can never say. Each application is
Okay.
taken on its own. But when you do have, you make the observation, there's a lot of houses there already.
So following up,
Wait, just
I'm sorry?
finish, okay? And part of the process is getting control of that development, making sure the planning board is involved, making sure that things are taken care of accordingly. I would, from my point of view, that settles the spirit of it. But that's just my point of view.
right, and this is always the tricky thing, because everyone who writes the proposed warrant articles and everyone who votes on it has in their minds the spirit, and
yeah.
then we are looking at the sort of textual residue afterwards and trying to guess what was the spirit. When I look at
Which
this.
is exasperated since Article 17 does not include a purpose.
Right, right,
So-
yeah. Excellent observation. So when I look at the prohibition on the development of Class 6 roads, and when I look at town budget items like an off-road firefighting truck, so that just speaks to the town being aware that certain areas are harder to access than others. And when I look to other parts of the zoning code, like the driveway turning radius pavement apron, I put all of these together, and I think that there is threaded through different aspects of the zoning code an intent to manage development and keep it on paved roads, and reduce the amount of development that is on dirt roads. And when I look at something that one opposing abutter brought, I think that this is a road, and it looks to me like a trail. And, you know, I can't see in flat pictures, but, you know, I think that the ruts might be 6 inches deep. I believe that Naomi presented some images of something that happened in a yard in that area. And Naomi's point was, look, you get some trucks up there, and they absolutely tear it all up and turn it into a mud field. And I thought that's relevant, because we've learned a few things. We've learned that the bedrock is 2 feet deep. We know that the ground is saturated. We know when we've heard that without countervailing argument.
No opportunity for countervailing argument.
Okay, all right. And so, putting all of this together, I deduce the spirit of the ordinance is that the town intends to limit development on dirt roads. And so, when I look at prong 2, the spirit of the ordinance, the intent is there should not be development on roads like this, and I did not hear anything that persuaded me that the facts of this matter said, well, yes, in general, dirt roads are muddy, but this one is 12 inches deep of highly permeable sand, hard packed and gravel. So I do not think that on prong 2, the burden of persuasion was met.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I would argue from the standpoint of that we are looking at the road versus the buildable lot. And we're actually supposed to be looking at the buildable lot on the road. So, you know, there is a distinction. Is the lot buildable on that road? Not is the road passable for that lot?
I'm not sure I agree. I
That's
think
fine.
that the specific clause that the applicant is seeking an exception from is laser focused on, should there be development on this kind of road, is it passable or not? Can an ambulance get there? Can a fire truck get there?
What's that reference?
Did we ask that question of the applicant? Can an ambulance get there? Can you?
That would have been a good thing for the applicant to persuade us on.
Well,
We're
okay.
closed at this point.
Seeing the
Yeah,
pictures, I'm
no.
not sure something could get
Well,
there.
in the current condition, probably not. But that doesn't mean, as the applicant has presented, they're willing to take the liability for upgrading the road in that area, which benefits the surrounding neighborhood. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
Because,
thing, go ahead.
again, you know, if the applicant were only coming up through River Road, that doesn't prevent everybody else from going down that road. But only he has direction in one direction.
So you raise a point that I do in fact find very persuasive, which is upgrading. And so at one point in time, I had the various classes of road memorized. I mean, I think number 1 is like an interstate, you know, 4 foot of gravel back underneath, et cetera. And class 5 is, I think development is allowed and it's paved, is that correct?
I believe you're right.
And so if we were to condition this application on upgrading the road to class 5, then every single doubt I have would go away.
I don't think we can make that kind of stipulation.
No.
Why not?
We have a basic set of,
Because it is a town-owned road.
Okay,
We don't have
Yeah,
that
it's,
authority.
okay,
you know, the only way you can do that is have a town-wide vote.
okay.
Accept it as but I know what you're saying to the practical
Yeah.
use of it, and
So I think what we're saying,
That'd still be an item that would be negotiated with the planning board.
well, yes, but, you know, the zoning board also does put conditions on stuff, so, all right, my point is made, I'll stop.
I guess, just a general comment to that, Travis, is it important for us to stipulate the conditions which would inherently be the criteria of the planning board? Right, there has to be this type of runoff, this type of road, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If those are going to be the inherent criteria that the planning board is going to evaluate with the applicant.
I think the way you phrased that is, of course, the answer is no. You know, the question is effectively, should the zoning board, you know, dictate to the planning board? I would say that that's not necessarily the correct question. The question, as I perceive, is the applicant is right now facing a zoning code, and that zoning code says The town, in its wisdom, does not want development on dirt roads that turn into mud pits when trucks get up there. And the applicant is saying, but I want to. And I'm saying, okay, I'm listening. Tell me why you want to. Tell me why this time it's different. Tell me what, if anything, you intend to do about it. And so I wasn't saying that the applicant has to make that promise. I'm just saying, if the applicant were to say, this would be upgraded to a road where there would not be the problems with the spirit of the ordinance about, a mud bogging pathway.
What's
that would be
the
persuasive.
reference for that, the
Right,
mud bogging
okay.
pathway?
I think we beat on this enough.
I think there's something material here, if I may,
Okay,
Malcolm.
we
Just-
have 3 other articles to discuss.
Well, I want to
Okay, go ahead.
due respect to the applicant, right? Which is, we think we're embellishing, right? What the
Okay.
applicant has to fill out that question is the town written ordinance, right? And to be able to support and substantiate that. So I think where it's, I think with good intent, but I don't see a reference in here that says, that the intent and the spirit of this ordinance is to make sure that we don't have muddy,
Right.
torn up
No,
roads. Right, so.
I agree with you.
With what's, now, if that is a mishap, then it's something we should take offline and gets addressed in greater clarity for the future. But as what the material is that's provided to the folks aware, is what they're based on, this basing it off of. And I believe that this substantially supports that.
Okay.
Tend to agree. Any further discussion? Great. Those in favor?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
Any yes? Article 2 passes 4-1. Do I hear a motion to accept Article 3?
I so motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm going to just say something right away. Substantial justice is done. It's a pretty solid statement. And it usually is based on the fact that somebody's got a buildable lot, in theory, a lot they ought to be able to build on. And if we deny them that right, is it substantial justice? Or that right to try? Because again, they need to go through the planning process. They need to satisfy a lot of other things. But at this level, in this venue, we're just deciding whether they can go ahead.
So I initially had no discussion for this point, but I will engage with your statement. So one thing you said is that if the applicant has a lot, then definitionally, there is substantial justice, because they need to build on the lot. And that sounds like an argument that would hold in every single case. And so it's effectively redefining, there are 4 prongs, plus 3 is a rubber stamp, because they have a lot. So that's one point. The second point is, you said there is benefit, the question is there benefit to the applicant? And I would point out that the text of the Supreme Court precedent on this is, does the benefit to the applicant outweigh the harm to the general public? So there are 2 sides, and there are places where, yeah, there is some harm to the abutters. Sorry, guys, you're going to get, a tad more runoff, but it's so important to this person. And it is the job of the ZBA to some degree approximate and use the forbidden numbers, take our own guesses, and weigh them. And in this case, I don't know, but the applicant has the burden of persuasion to say, yeah, the amount of damage will be this, and the amount of benefit will be that, and I heard no such persuasion.
Okay, anything else?
I would, to that point, that persuasion would come at the planning board meeting, not really here.
I absolutely disagree.
You can.
The purpose of the variance process is that the applicant has the burden of persuasion on each of the 5 prongs.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
However, to that point, not only do they have the persuasion here,
Right.
but they have to persuade the planning board. If they don't, the variance that we grant is null and null.
Sure, but I mean, your point is true, and I agree with you, but it could also be used sort of too flippantly, saying, come on, guys, let's hurry through this, it's getting late, vote yes on all 5. The planning board is the one that actually thinks things through. They do their job, and we do ours.
I won't disagree with you there.
And I don't think that an applicant can persuade greater than what the intended use is, right? there's nothing more than putting the house on the lot again that occurred there that would be to a benefit to anyone else, right? Right, it's not, hey, have a house and open a water slide park.
Yeah, no.
Right.
And I wouldn't ask
So,
for that.
Right, so I think that we're getting into an academic exercise as to asking something of the applicant that's not possible to provide, right? And in that terms of being outweighed by the harm to the greater public.
This is just a
We've already
matter,
discussed it
there's
to
a
be
question
TBD.
of justice, substantial justice being done.
Yes.
Would they, or should they be able to use their?
I agree with your original
their
statement.
lot?
Yes.
Would they, or should they be able to proceed
Yes.
to find out if they can use their lot?
Go through full
Our
discovery.
variance is not a done deal. It's one step.
But I think that gets back to, it doesn't matter if we, play a little fast and dirty because there's another step. I think that we should in fact follow the Supreme Court precedent and the handbook for zoning board members and do the process correctly. And so, anyway, I'll just restate and then I'll close my point. They are not tasked with persuading us that there is a benefit. They're here. They perceive a benefit. There is a benefit. They are tasked with with convincing us that the benefit is greater than the harm. And it might very well be. I don't know what the harm is. I've got claims on one side. The end.
So, but to your point, yes, there is a benefit to the applicant.
Oh, absolutely.
However, there's also a benefit to the surrounding neighbors. As stated, the road's gonna be upgraded.
That's a claim.
Well, they have it in writing that they'll assume the liability, right?
So assuming the liability is different from saying that they'll upgrade the road, and I have a question about assuming the liability, which is, sure, they sign a contract with the town and assuming the liability. Is that liability implemented as an easement that travels with the property, or is it liability that travels with the owner and stays with them after they sell the property, or is it none of the above, or it vaporizes when the property
The
is sold?
variance goes with a lot.
Right.
A variance does, a
Any
disclaimer
stipulations
of
along with that
liability.
variance will also be a part of that variance.
Okay,
Right.
stipulations are different from signing a disclaimer of liability.
And that relates to to sufficient justice, substantial justice? How?
That was a tangent. I was responding to someone raising the point about the liability waiver. I didn't raise that and was just
That was
engaging with
me.
that topic.
Okay. Any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor?
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
Yes.
And a yes. Prong
Wrong.
3 passes 4 yes and 1 abstention. Do I hear a motion to accept prong 4?
I so motion.
Moved and seconded.
Second it.
Okay, sorry.
Didn't hear it yet.
I don't mean to jump ahead
It's okay.
there. Any discussion? Please describe the values of the surrounding properties are not diminished. Well, that's a 50-50.
I've got
When-
super brief discussion, which you're going to love. No one argued that the values would be diminished. None of the disapproving abutters, and the applicant argued that they would not be. And so by sort of the rules of the road, we, in that case, have to take the applicant's claim.
Any other discussion?
I agree.
Being none, all those in favor accepting prong, what are we on?
Four.
Thank you, geez.
Yes.
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 Prong 4, yes. Prong 4 passes 5-0. Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept prong 5 in its entirety?
I so motion.
Second.
Are we gonna put the stipulations on and?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
And then re-clarify it with the,
It's been moved and seconded, but I'm not gonna call
Stipulations.
that to a vote. Would you like to reword your motion to accept, or to include
On
those
prong
4
4.
stipulations? What are those?
5,
Yeah,
On prong 5.
Prong 5 in its entirety.
Okay.
with all of these.
I motion that we accept an open debate on prong 5 hardship, with the stipulation that, one, the applicant shall be required to post the necessary signs at the transition from the private road in accordance with the Town of Ware sign policy and be consistent with New Hampshire RSA 674-41-1D. 2, the applicant shall be required to complete a Town of Ware liability disclaimer and file the disclaimer with the Hillsborough County Register of Deeds and to be consistent with New Hampshire RSA 674-41-1D. 3, the applicant shall take the necessary actions to be in practical compliance with the Town of Ware Planning Board subdivision regulation for driveway permit requirements and the Town of Ware zoning ordinance, Article 36. The Town of Ware's Public Works Director shall be the authority of interpreting the practical implementation of this condition. 4, the applicant shall be required to take the necessary actions to comply with the E911 signage requirements for proper residence location identification to support emergency vehicles for life and safety. My motion.
Do I hear a second to that?
I'll second that amendment of the motion.
Moved and seconded to accept prong 5 in its entirety with the 4 stipulations. Is there any discussion?
I have discussion, which is, as I note every time a variance application for a Class 6 road comes up, we basically, on the ZBA, have sort of a majority opinion that the zoning code doesn't mean what it says, that anyone who lives on a Class 6 road is allowed to build there. And every time they come up, they say, well, what distinguishes this property from the other properties is this one is on a Class 6 road. And I feel that I should be allowed to build like other people on Class 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 roads should build. And so there's not a uniqueness where, I've got some frontage on a Class 3 road, but I want to move my driveway 11 feet down. That would be a sort of unique thing. And so I absolutely understand sort of an argument of justice, not necessarily prong whatever about justice, that, hey, the preceding ZBA has rubber stamped Class 6 variances every single time. I get it. They did. It strikes me that if the Town of Ware supports building on Class 6 roads, this is very simple. We can just change that ordinance, the members of the public can vote for it, and then we can save everyone a lot of time because everyone is allowed to build on Class 6 roads. But given that that has not been done, I do not see under prong 5 hardship any elements of this case that distinguish it from any other case where a lot is located on a Class 6 road.
Any other discussion?
I think the hardship would be fairly simple, that there is no other option for that property as far as access to it, other than that Class 6 road.
I agree.
That would be the hardship. They don't have any other options.
I mean, no one would ever show up here for a variance to build on a Class 6 road if they could turn their house 90 degrees and build on another road. And so I think that basically just sort of restates what I said, that the ZBA is decided to be in the business of rubber stamping, overriding one clause of the zoning code, and so be it.
That is not necessarily so, but I get where you're coming from. One of the dynamics with this kind of situation is that a lot of times people want to just build a house. They didn't get a variance. They contested it at the state level, and they lost. Some people have been winning because of these stipulations. They said basically, wait a minute, why can't I build on a house, on a lot on a Class 6 road if I agree to these? And these have been increasingly sent back for that reason. If the applicant agrees to those types of stipulations, it nullifies some of that. So that's where we're at now. It's a kind of a change overall. As I remember when I first started dealing with these, it was a lot harder to get a variance. But then they started coming back from the state.
I think it would be.
I observed in my research.
I think it would be great to alter the zoning code to say, and anyone who wants can build on a Class 6 road if bullet points 1 through 4.
Right.
And I urge them to look into that. I'd vote for that, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think it's a good suggestion.
It would save everyone a lot of time.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Prong 5 passes in its entirety 4-1. With the stipulations stated.
Yes.
Yes.
You have your variance. You have your variance.
Under the planning board.
Next up, case 05-2025.
This one could be
Variance
quick.
request for the deck.
Just replace an existing one, or-
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be cranky about
I was
this.
gonna say, you good about this one?
Cut and dry, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You guys had a chance to look at the application.
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody
Yeah.
satisfied with the application?
Yes.
It's a lot of information.
Right, do I hear a motion to accept the application?
Moved.
Second.
Moved and second to accept the application as presented. All of the, any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, 5-0, the vote, we've accepted this application. Who's here to speak to it?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jason Reimers. I'm with BCM Environmental and Land Law. And I represent the applicant Lori Wiley. Lori's not here tonight. Normally I tell clients, yeah, you should be there, but she's a veteran who suffers from situational anxiety and needs to avoid stressful situations when she can. So I just wanted to say that in case you're wondering, she doesn't care enough to show up for her own variance hearing.
I gotta stop you right there.
Sure.
You are her representative?
Yes.
An application.
We filed the application on her behalf. My partner, Mike Harris, is listed as one of the abutters. He unexpectedly couldn't be here tonight, so I'm covering for him.
Typically, when we have somebody representing somebody, we have a letter in place stating that they can represent me. I don't see that letter. Do you guys?
That's what I was looking for.
Is that part of the, I haven't encountered that as normal I understand that that is, we submitted the application. Do you have our May 9th letter?
Yep. I think we do.
No, so I guess in short, I don't have a letter that expressly says,
So you see where I'm coming from with that. We are actually not, we're not really able to hear that. Usually, you can have a representative if the person is in the audience, but they're not here to speak. And we don't have a letter stating that you can represent them.
can I call her?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to see if there's some way that we could make this work, either a phone call.
She's
or
available,
informational.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no.
No, she said she was, I said, Lori, can you be available by phone in case there's a question or something that I can't answer?
I would be satisfied with that. I wouldn't want to drag this out months because we've got one missing piece of paper if we can verify the intent.
Everybody likes to expedite it, but I want to make sure that we do it correctly.
Understood. I mean, we submitted the application.
Yeah.
We are on the abutters list.
But you're not on the application, you're not the applicant.
No, we're not, but the letter to which she was CC'd says, that this firm represents applicant Lori Wiley.
Where's that reference?
I see where you're coming from. 'Cause it's unusual that the applicant's not sitting right next to me.
It has happened before, so it's not crazy.
No.
We just have to figure out if we can satisfy
We
the.
typically don't go forward because of the potential issues. We could have somebody disagreeing with you or them, and I don't know, I'm
Somebody disagreeing
sure about
with-
this.
with
Pardon?
someone, I guess I don't understand, someone disagreeing with,
I'll use
where
the
that
last
citation
case
is.
as a good example.
Yeah.
We heard the case originally from an applicant that wasn't present, and they had someone else representing them, but it was actually the
Third in line or something.
third in line. And, yes, they had a letter to represent the person that was going to buy the property, but not the actual landowners. So that was part of the reason why we had the case again today. So to the chairman's point, if we were to vote against this, without having the applicant's authority for you to represent them, we become liable as a board, and the town
Right.
becomes liable.
What we normally would do in a situation like that, if the applicant, if there's a trouble with the application, so to speak, the applicant could withdraw. But even now, you're not qualified to withdraw. You're not, there's no letter in here, and I apologize, I didn't catch it right away. But if you're not legally, a legal representative, there's no letter that says, because if your Ms. Wiley, if we go through this and you say this and you say that and you agree to this and you agree to that, she might say, wait a minute, that's not what I agreed to. So we have like Kurt said, we'd have a liability issue here.
So, Malcolm, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah?
And I just want to think ahead about if there is a way to achieve what we need to achieve. One possibility is, if she's in town, could we move the next case up and see?
no, she's not in town.
Okay.
What I would suggest is that I have a
Oh.
motion to,
She sent me an email today at 5:50 saying, "Hi Jason, I wanted to thank you for attending the zoning board meeting tonight for me. I'll be available by phone all evening," and then she mentioned some other things.
I would find that potentially compelling to move forward.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I feel for you here. I'm not trying to be difficult.
I understand.
But this is a difficult situation when we have where you're gonna be speaking for somebody and we're not even sure that's her on the phone. People, I don't
No,
mean
I-
to pass that,
yeah,
but
yeah,
there it
no.
is.
So
And
could
if
email
if
before
this
I
becomes a
come out.
problem down the road,
So let me
it's
ask.
not,
Let me ask you this, sorry for interrupting.
yeah, go
I
ahead. No,
apologize. We do have a telephone number. Is that her telephone number?
That is.
Would you be amenable to
Calling and asking? And see if-
calling and asking, and getting a verbal from the applicant that it is okay? I agree with you from the standpoint that it still isn't, we don't have proof that it's her, per se, other than being on the phone at that number.
And can,
I actually find the email quite compelling, and I would suggest that if that email could be forwarded to the town administrator, we could enter it into the record, and I think that would be close to airtight.
I understand where you're coming from. And I represent some other towns' zoning boards. And so, I know some boards have an express requirement of a letter. I didn't prepare this application. I don't know if you have an express requirement or if that's a practice that you do.
Let's look at the checklist.
But, and I'm not trying to say like, oh, don't delay us a month. I'm more concerned,
Number 2. You're right.
is it on there?
Yes.
It is.
two.
So I'm more concerned,
Point 2.
Yeah.
You have it?
I'm sorry, I was trying to work really hard to
No, I-
argue your side.
I have to apologize.
Written authorization
because
is
we should caught this before we accepted the application.
So what about this email?
We didn't know she was.
Yeah, well, that's,
Can we table
point.
this and just swap the order?
I was
Give
expecting
him
to
an
hear from the
opportunity to.
Yeah,
get this
what
done.
about, this email is written authorization for me to be here on her behalf.
So, a question for the board. How do we decide our own policies? Could we vote on this matter?
yes, we can.
Okay.
That's why I was going to.
He was getting that way.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Malcolm was going that way.
My apologies.
Typically, what we would do is bump it down to the next month. But if you can get an email from her stating that you can represent her, I would suggest, I'd like to, I'd like to see a hard copy, though. Here it is, written authorization.
Email's written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I make a motion, and you can vote me down 4-1, but I make a motion that if that email is forwarded right now to the town administrator, that we take that as satisfying item 2 on the checklist.
I'll second that.
Great.
Moved and seconded to accept an email authorization sent to the town administrator for this case, case 05-2025. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
A yes from me, too. 5-0. As long as we get that, an email written. It
I
can come after the
appreciate-
fact, but the sooner the better.
Give me the email address and I'll send it right now.
Cool. Trying to speed read this application.
It's the same footprint. That's the-
It says it is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, applicant seeks to replace the existing deck with a new one of the exact size. No changes to the dimensions or footprint.
He's not on the Wi-Fi, hang on. Yeah, put it on the door. That's why it won't send.
No.
Which makes sense.
Does anyone have the zoning code with them?
Yep.
Great, I've dragged it with me every single time, and,
Even
Not this
though the
time.
great,
page.
thank you. But I've got a different page I'm going to. I'm going to definitions.
What are you gonna look up? I'll tell you.
The definition of building, which I believe
It has
is,
to have a roof and.
Exactly.
Intended for shelter.
Exactly.
Structure on the other.
Reading
hand,
my mind.
is,
Yep.
That which is built or constructed.
Yep.
Nicely done. Definitions for 800.
I'd already gone there. I did my homework.
Yep.
Having some wine. The only thing more stressful than presenting a hearing is trying to do the technology things in front of the.
Naomi in the back corner would probably know where good Wi-Fi in the building is.
Well, I'm trying to get onto this.
Okay.
Do you want to move on to the next? hearing while
That was what I was
get this
originally
sorted
gonna
out?
suggest.
Yeah, I was thinking that
I would
earlier.
like to move on to
Yeah,
the last,
if,
that would be,
Okay.
I would love that too.
Great, cool,
I'll get this sorted out.
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so basically I need a motion to,
Table?
I so,
Is that?
yeah, I will speak up a little bit for the microphones.
get it figured
I move that we place this case on the table, hopefully for later in the evening.
Second.
move and second to table this to the next time slot in the meeting.
And a
Those
vote?
opposed, yeah.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
5-0, okay. You're number 3 on the list now.
Happily, happily.
Take care of that and come back
I will, thank you.
brand new.
Still not bad.
I keep stepping on your feet when speaking, and I apologize that the pauses are a little off. I think he's done, and then he's not, so I'm not trying to.
Who made your motion and who seconded, please?
What's that?
Who made your motion and who seconded?
I motioned, And you seconded?
Kurt
One of us
seconded.
did, you can pick.
Okay, now,
Thank you.
application 06-2025. There it is, okay. Applicant is seeking a variance to build residential single-family cluster subdivision in a commercial zone.
And they put everything into the application. They didn't take anything out. Made it a bit confusing. Yeah, your name and it's in here.
Does it look like we can go
So
forward with
wait a
this?
second, wait a second.
Okay.
On the agenda, this is listed as a variance, but it's actually a special exception, is that right?
No,
No,
they
they just
included
put
some documents.
everything
in
there that-
Redundant.
Okay, all right, great.
It made me think twice too when I
Yeah.
saw it. Wait a minute, but it's just kind of redundant.
So actually, it's more than complete.
Yeah.
I gotta shift gears.
A waiver.
Yeah, if you take out all the extra, I would say that it's complete.
How's it look, guys? Do I hear a motion to accept the application?
I so move. I second.
Wait, what?
I moved, he seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded to accept the application as presented. Discussion? Being none, all those in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And a yes. Okay, we accept the application. Case 06-2025. Who's here to speak to it?
I don't know, I gotta go find him, he's probably in this car, to you guys at last.
Oh, right, yeah.
Fair enough.
I didn't catch what she
He,
said.
he thought he was an hour
Okay.
further out.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
Cortland Ave, right, so this is right by the fire department? Yeah, Orchard Hill Road, yeah, I know where this is.
Bolton Field across from there.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, yep.
Procedure question.
Yeah.
What are the recommendation, rezone? Saying, hey, really, this area might be
Yeah.
a good candidate for rezoning.
Yeah.
We vote from the town.
I think the planning board in general does that?
So we get out of, would that be a conversation out up front
Yeah,
and before going too far down?
yeah. I think that's a smart thing to raise.
Good evening. And you are?
Good evening. My name is William Mackenzie. We're here for 657 South Stark Highway. My engineer had submitted a conceptual for review a couple of months back. And at that meeting, it was determined the best route would be go to the zoning board and get a variance. The conceptual was a cluster residential subdivision for the easterly side of the property. That's in one of the exhibits. I think it's Exhibit C, off of Renshaw Road. The previous zoning allowed, I believe, for residential use. There was a change in 2020, 2021 that restricted the use just to commercial. So you couldn't, build residential. We still feel at this time with the demand for housing as it is, and the mood of the legislature and the general public, that the conceptual plan for residential use is still, very appropriate. It is a residential street, and we're conforming to that residential character.
Are you saying that this was originally accepted because it was in a residential zone?
Well, actually, the history of the property, there was a residential subdivision back in the mid-90s, or earlier.
Right.
Earlier. I think that had almost either achieved approval or was very close to it.
Okay.
Then we had the real estate crash of the 90s, and that project ended. My wife and I had submitted a cluster subdivision back, that might have been the late 90s. That would have had the homes all along the west border of the property. In a cluster that was done by Earl Sanford
Right.
in conformance, with the cluster zoning regulations for residences. And so
Okay, so
anyway,
that
we didn't carry that through.
Right. That's the context of your application, right? Pretty much.
Yes.
I would ask that you go through your variance application now and answer each question. We kind of, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but we want to try to keep to the format.
Sure.
And please speak up.
I was about to ask, is your voice capable of reading all of this aloud? Because it
Does this work?
should.
Yeah.
Is that better? Is it on? There's a green light here.
Then,
Yeah, it's on.
Can you hear me?
We'll have plenty of time to ask questions and have a
Yeah.
lot of back and forth here.
Sure.
But if we kind of keep to this,
Yeah.
starting with Article 1 of the variance, read the variance, the question, excuse me, and your answer to it, so that we can get a little bit of flow to this.
You only have to,
You see that?
for the question, I would only read what's in bold print.
Yeah. Are you
And
on
then
the
you
right page? Variance, number 1, variance will not be contrary to the public interest.
Yeah. Yeah. Number 1. The public interest will best be served in preserving the character of the present neighborhood. We purchased, in fact, one of the, from an abutter, frontage on Renshaw for the purpose of, eventually residential use. And to have trucks, for commercial development, traveling on, that residential street would not necessarily be in the best interest of the occupants. For the safety of the children would be one factor. So it is in conformance with the general public interest. Single-family homes will fully conform with the totally single-family nature and character of Renshaw Road. And there's a note in that also, the 657 South Highway property has for well more than half a century been used as residential multifamily dwellings. We purchase it, for rental purposes, and we've kept it that way since the mid-90s. There's a multifamily in the sense that the existing Cape-style home has, the main floor is one rental unit, and the former and still existing in-law apartment is a separate rental unit. So the history of the property, and in fact, there's the barn dwelling as well. An old barn that was converted into a dwelling by the former owner. And we've updated it and fixed it, and it's been inspected and whatever, and conforms to everything. So the nature of the property has always been a rental, dwellings.
You don't see any conflict with the existing commercial use there? Is there any commercial use that there would be a problem with?
Our most recent tenant, the occupant in the barn dwelling, happens to be an appliance repairman. And, he has personal vehicles and he has a business vehicle, but he's not, he rents the barn dwelling.
So all the properties right now on Renshaw are residential? None of them are commercial?
Correct. There's on Route 114, at the intersection of Renshaw, there's the apartment house, the old A1 Saw, and on the other side is Mark Phillips. He has his auto repair business. That's the extent of, the commercial.
So that extension of Renshaw towards the end of Renshaw, those are all single-family dwellings or lots?
Yes, the rest of Renshaw, single family. Although, I think at least one of them has, an in-law apartment type arrangement.
But I guess my question was a little foggy. Are any houses built on these lots?
Renshaw?
Yeah.
It's fully occupied as far as I know.
Neighborhood.
Pardon?
It's a neighborhood, right?
Yes.
Zone commercial.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Smack dab in
Residential
a
lots.
commercial zone.
Oh, so Renshaw itself is zoned
So you're
commercial as
saying-
well. Interesting.
It was originally a residential area, and they rezoned it in the...
No, I think it was, and I'm only going by vague recollection, it may have been in a commercial zone that allowed residential use.
I believe that's correct. I believe that if you look through the zoning code for each of the zones, it says, and in here, you can do X, Y, and Z, and in this zone, you can do QRS. And the commercial zone, up until, as you mentioned earlier, a few years ago, did allow residential in it. And there was a warrant article that passed which removed residential as a valid use for commercial space. So if the applicant had attempted this development 5 years ago, he wouldn't need a variance, he would have just gone and done it. But since that warrant article was passed, now he's before us.
2020.
Correct. And furthermore, Anthony Costello, AC Engineering, in his research, I think he said you could, by variance, build apartments on the property. I'm not, I didn't read that myself, but even though it is commercial now, restricts single family, you could go for a variance and get a multifamily, type dwelling.
Right. Any other questions? You want to possibly move on to the next article?
Number 2, please describe how the spirit of the ordinance is observed. The proposed single-family use generates similar traffic usage as the existing neighborhood. Commercial traffic, such as tractor-trailer delivery vehicles, could present a hazard to opposing vehicles and/or children playing on the winding Renshaw Road. And there is quite almost like a 90-degree turn there at the entrance.
The only thing I would say to that statement is that the commercial traffic at this point would be, in theory, since the only commercial properties that are doing anything would be
On 114.
R 114, lot 109 and 107. So I don't know that, that's my statement on that. I don't,
Right.
right now, there's no commercial activity that goes beyond those two, so.
But I think, I took it the question addressed, the
Understood.
use of the property.
Can I
ask
a question?
No?
Not yet.
You'll have a turn. Okay. Thank you. Okay, would you like to move number 3?
Please describe how substantial justice is done. Adding homes to the market, especially in this low inventory market, will benefit future home buyers and the general public. I mean,
Makes sense to me.
it's desperate need for housing.
Number 4?
Pardon?
Any other questions as we go? No? Number 4?
Please describe how the values of surrounding properties are not diminished. If it were to be used and developed as commercial trucking on the residential Renshaw Road, which is sometimes used as a playground by the neighborhood children, would be eliminated by the residential use of the subject property.
Any questions?
Mr.
Number 5?
Yeah, I would just say that, again, it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
Your commercial versus residential.
Yeah.
Though you may not, you're avoiding commercial, but you're adding a lot more residential traffic, so that to me is not.
Right. Number 5?
Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. The proposed cluster lot area occupies a mixed undulating landscape of uplands and wetlands that can accommodate the flexibility of smaller creative lot designs, but not the massive footprints demanded by commercial buildings. That's what Ace Engineering, looked at, and through his creative thinking, he could place, homes without a great disturbance to the existing landscape.
Basically, the overriding
Pardon?
use of the area is residential.
Please say again.
So basically, what you're saying is that the overriding use of the area is residential, even though it's zoned commercial.
Yes.
More single-family homes in that area, it's more like a neighborhood.
Yes,
That's what I'm trying to,
it'll be a continuation of it.
okay.
Although if you looked at Exhibit C, you would see there's a stretch of road before it actually gets to where Anthony Costello, proposes the cluster. So there is a little dividing area between the Renshaw neighborhood and the cluster, proposed, cluster.
Okay. I want to look at part I of number 5, or II for that matter. Take both of those and address those any way you like.
Now, which one are we on? 5.1,
1 in section 2 of Article 5.
I and double I.
double I. Owing to the special conditions identified above, please indicate how the proposed use is a reasonable one. The commercial use of the area of the proposed cluster subdivision is unreasonable in that, 1, it would require extensive leveling of the land for commercial development. Number 2, the undulating mixed landscape does not lend itself to larger commercial structures. And it can be done, anything can be done. You can move the equipment in and level, the whole area. Put a nice large, warehouse or whatever. But Anthony used his creative design so we can work, with the land instead of against it.
Mr. McKenzie,
How much
could I?
traffic is on Renshaw Road, would you say? What's your take on how much commercial traffic as opposed to residential traffic?
In terms of residential deliveries, there's Prime and FedEx and UPS, that occurs all the time.
Yeah, that's the closest thing you've got to commercial.
Yes.
Okay,
Except at the very beginning.
Yep.
yeah.
So just kind of an overall question though, right? I know this is zone commercial and you want to put residential houses on it. Why not change the zoning to residential and then you can put residential houses on it?
Well, that's what we're requesting, that, we get to use it as,
Well, it's a
resident.
variance, but you can change the zoning, right? Because we should be able to go change the zoning to make this residential instead of commercial if there's no commercial ever gonna be there.
That would require a townwide vote.
Yeah, I think, right?
Yeah, that was discussed, at the
Pardon?
that was discussed at the presentation that Anthony made with his conceptual originally. So, and they went back and forth and decided that a variance was the best way to go, the most efficient.
Malcolm, just
Yes.
so that we make sure that this is all done completely, we do need 5I to be read as well. He read 5II, so we need 5I to be read, and so it's on the record.
Did you catch that?
Mr. McKenzie, I need you to read 5I, the one above the
Yes.
II, just
Yeah.
so that we have it on record.
Okay.
Thank you.
There are many potential home buyers in the general public desperately in need of housing, such as that proposed by AC Engineering Cluster Housing Plan. the subject area may logically be precluded from use due to unnecessary and extensive site disturbance requirements by larger commercial footprint demands.
Is there anything I want to add to that? Overall, any more questions?
So you've owned it since the 90s,
Yes,
and it's been vacant land,
yes,
and nothing's been put on it.
correct.
No commercial stuff whatsoever.
Just feels.
Yeah. No questions?
So I guess, the reason why you're coming off of Renshaw versus coming off of the highway, Stark Highway, is because there is an existing property there, structures, buildings, I should use buildings. So you can't access where you're looking to build through that area.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you can come in off of 657.
Okay.
And there's just an old farm road that went right through the property and exited out onto Renshaw. And my wife and I bought that area of Renshaw from Debbie Gilbert a few years ago, eventually for the purpose of, recognizing the residential, logical residential use. That does not mean necessarily and strictly that the front area fronting on Route 114 would necessarily have to be residential all the time. That could eventually evolve into commercial use.
Then it becomes mixed use.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, yeah, so the only other, not the only other, one of the questions I have is, when I'm looking at Exhibit C, and I look at lot 3, 4, and 5, coming off of that roundabout there, or the cul-de-sac.
Yes.
I knew I was saying it right. How are lot 3 and lot 5 accessed from that
From
cul-de-sac? Because I don't see a means to, I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, that's what that was my question.
Well, yeah.
That was my
Oh, yeah, flagpole lots.
Kind of,
Do you see that? That lots 3 and 5 actually do have narrow access?
That's what I was assuming, but.
I don't want to
Still my
assume.
question. Yeah, I know, that was my question too.
I don't think it's assuming, I think that it's drawn that way. I mean,
Because if it were drawn that way, I would expect to see an opening as the driveway off of that.
keep in mind, this is the engineer's conceptual draft. This is not meant to be a specific plan to be voted on at this meeting. We're asking to use it as for residential purposes.
so Kurt, when you talk about openings, I think we're actually looking at sort of a weird dashed line where we have a long, a short, a short, a long, a short, a short. And so on some places it looks like there's openings, but that's just sort of a weird visual artifact of the blue dashed line.
That's, I mean, if you look down at the rendering in, look over, yeah.
What am I looking at?
Sort of,
Which exhibit?
so down here, that's the easiest way to put it. When you look at that part of it.
Yeah.
It shows it as such, but it's not clear,
All right.
when
it
you look
shows
at the
a-
bigger.
Shows the
bigger
double
picture.
line as opposed to a single line on those two lots. On the larger print. It looks like
So-
each
so the-
exhibit are we on?
each lot has,
Would that change our?
So for
Each
me, the
lot
way I
has
see
access
it
from-
is that you've either cut out a driveway
that's what it looks like.
sliver,
Yes.
so that's your property, or you're actually going through two people's property to get to those.
Well, it looks like it's not really it's a development, so it would be like,
Maybe I'm missing something, but it just looks like flagpole lots to me.
Yeah, this conceptual was,
long driveways there to reach the two lots in the back.
The other people's
But
property is right
they're,
next to the driveway.
they're shown.
Yep. There's a question of
It's an
frontage.
interesting drawing, to say the least, but
All right.
I don't see a major problem with it. Again, I think it might be a planning board issue, as far as,
the other-
you said this was conceptual,
Yeah.
you might have more discussion on that.
oh, absolutely, yeah.
Mr. McKenzie?
Yeah, this was only done to get the discussion going and be able to use it eventually, but not to be a final, plan.
Mr. McKenzie, if I may, do you recall what the reason was provided to seek a variance versus rezoning?
I think at that, meeting, they went back and forth, but they said, well, it was mentioned here, you'd have to go for a town-wide vote, and that might take a year or who knows how long, whereas a variance would clear the issue up pretty quick. If we, it just conform, it would have to, in the end, conform to everything the planning board would impose, within the regulations. So this is not, a concrete plan by any means.
So is the yellow representative of wetlands?
Yes,
Okay. So you're going through a wetlands area with the road?
correct.
That would be another variance, right?
Yeah, that'd be, yeah.
Keep in mind, that's the old farm road. It's exactly where that,
So that road already exists.
Regardless of whether it exists or not, it's gonna have to be upgraded, which means you're gonna impact the wetlands even more.
that point of the land drains directly to the north and eventually under Renshaw Road. And then the opposite side goes directly south. There's two directions of drainage where the proposed, road or the old farm road went.
Okay.
So
Go
I,
ahead.
I would suggest that we're allowed to ask questions about this, but the variance being requested is basically to build cluster residences all, not necessarily this exact layout. And so, he might even choose, after talking to the planning board, to have access come in from 114. I see there's a gap in the wetlands, so, perhaps,
Another variance.
yeah, exactly. So it's worth calling that out, but it,
No, that's all I was doing.
cool,
Yeah.
great.
Anything else you wanna present?
I think we pretty well covered it.
Okay,
It's common sense to me.
I get it, I understand. Now I guess we should probably have
Open it up.
open it up to the rest of the public.
By all means, yeah.
Have a chance to rebut anything that's said or whatnot.
Should I just take a seat?
Oh, yeah, have a seat and, are there any approving abutters? Okay.
So, excuse me, I'm a little heated because I just saw the plans, and my house,
approving.
sorry,
Approving.
I'm Tiffany Waite, my house is 45 Renshaw.
And you're approving, you want this to happen?
Oh, God, no.
Okay, then,
Oh, okay, is that what you said?
Oh, we're approving first?
approving first.
Yeah. I switched around, I'm sorry.
Do you have any more printouts?
No approving of butters. Being none. Disapproving of butters.
So, I have no problem with him building a subdivision. My problem lies in where he's trying to access this subdivision. My house is directly, I'm Tiffany Waite, I'm 45 Renshaw, I don't know my my lot number, but my garage is right across from this access road. When he bought this property, we were told that's what's wetlands, and you guys can see on the map, it's wetlands. He's already taken down trees off of that road and widened it. Whether he had approval or not my concern, but our road has gotten significantly worse since then, with flooding and cracks. I mean, our road has been on the list to get fixed for the past 3 years, as I've been told. It's finally getting done this year, apparently, but so far, all we've had is them putting in a pipe underneath where the drains. This is fine with me, because we're on the schedule. My concern is the amount of traffic that's gonna come through there. It's a blind spot. When you're coming around the corner, you can't see that access road. And in order to do that, he's gonna have to take down more trees in wetlands, which is gonna cause more flooding, which is gonna affect our sewer, our leach field, our well system. God knows what's in there for insects, whatever lives in wetlands. I don't know, I'm not an expert on wetlands, but I did some research, and there's things that live in there that you don't know, and it's all wet. It's going to cause more of a problem on Renshaw with the wetlands being affected with flooding. Our road's going to get fixed this year. He gets approval, he builds in a year or two. Our road's going to need to be done again in another 2 years after that. But the taxpayers are going to have to fund that after they already did it this year.
Let me ask a question, if I may. There are kind of two issues here, and they're both relevant. One is, should there be access through the proposed area, maybe clipping wetlands, doing all the stuff you're talking about? The other question is, what sort of development should be done on that property? Because right now, the law says it can only be commercial. And this hearing is not so much to put that road there,
Yeah.
but it's to say, let's put residents there. So if you could, and I heard everything you said, and I'm going to remember it, but do you have a thought about, let's say, whether he puts the road there or he puts the road on 114, what are your thoughts on what you and other abutters might prefer or have thoughts about commercial versus residential?
I don't think any residential or commercial should be accessed through Renshaw. But
Noted.
I don't have a problem with him developing that land, whatever he wants to do.
So if the access
As long
came in
as he
from
does not touch
114.
wetlands, because the wetlands are close to Renshaw, which is already a bad street as it is, because, as I've been told, it's been built on swamp. So it's already got issues with water, but it's gotten worse since he's widened that access road.
So if I could restate, and tell me if I'm restating correctly, if the access came in from 114, you don't really have an opinion?
As long as he doesn't get close to Renshaw, where the majority of that wetlands is.
Agreed. If he comes in through 114, he doesn't come within
Yes.
15 or 50 feet of the wetlands. But on the topic of residents versus commercial there, are you, have an opinion that you want to express?
Not really. I mean, I definitely agree, it makes sense to have more residential, but 9 lots is kind of excessive in the area that he's talking about, because, you know, on Satellite, it's not a very big area. I mean, and there's tons of wetlands in the general area.
I definitely get the wetlands thing,
Yeah.
and so that's possibly something
But-
that could be done as a caveat on any approval or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to tease out is the issue of commercial versus residential.
So I will say that my garage, which is directly across, it's separate from my house, it is zone commercial, because whoever owned it before me had a business out of there. So it is zone commercial. But we don't use it as that, we use it as a chicken coop. So, I mean, as far as that goes. But the amount of traffic that that person had wasn't as big as a regular commercial. I mean, because you got Mark Phillips Auto also on that road at the very end. So there's some traffic for commercially for that road, but not all the way to where the access road is. But tractor trailers and that such, that's not what happens. It's auto. It's, you know, it's
Okay.
cars.
I think we got most of your concern.
Okay.
But one thing I want to clarify, you said he's built the access road already, or?
He has widened it since I've lived there. I was there in 2018, and he got the property, he switched lot lines with Deb in 2019, and when we did our outdoor chicken coop, we saw him out there frequently taking trees down, which is within his right, but the road widened in that time as well. So I don't know if that's wetlands where the road is, but I've noticed a difference in the water issues.
Right. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry, any other questions? Very good. Next? No. Any other, disapproving of butter?
Yes, good evening. My name's Craig Tatro, live on Renshaw Road. I've lived there for 22 years. I have no issues with any kind of development there. I think accessing it from Renshaw is the wrong move. The road, we have a hard enough time trying to maintain it as it is. The drainage is absolutely horrible. Another concern is if we do a cluster is the aquifer. What does it do to our wells? So that's my main concerns right there. I think it would be better if it's accessed off of 114. I don't know if you've been on Renshaw Road. It's a tight road. And it's not good. So the road needs to be done right. The drainage on our road is absolutely horrible. I can't even mow my lawn down near the road, so.
So asking the same follow-up question I asked earlier, if the wetlands were respected, if the access wasn't bothering you, it was off on 114, just focusing on what goes there, do you have any thoughts or concerns that you want to
I don't
express?
mind residential whatsoever.
Okay.
I would like it to see if there's a study. I'm concerned on the water.
Great.
No, it's wet.
And more so like our wells.
Okay.
Cool.
Because if our wells dry up, where are we at now?
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Noted.
So that's my concerns. Cool. And the road needs to be done better, for sure. Please.
Thank you. Any other disapproving of butters?
I'm George Mantini. I live on 114, 2 houses up from the corner of Renshaw. My backyard is the wetlands over the stone wall. The only question I have is, I have a question for the board. Is there a lot size required to build single-family homes? 1 acre, 2 acres?
That's a planning board decision that needs to be
Okay.
made, discussed. It all depends. With lot sizes, for clusters, a lot of it depends on the environmental situation.
Okay, all right.
How much drainage they can get and how they can manage the land.
Okay.
Not really a question for us to answer.
There is, to some degree, we can say what the zoning code says, and the zoning code says that in general, for a standalone home, it has to be subdivided onto 2 acres. There is a clause about cluster housing, which redistributes stuff, and I don't have that memorized, so I think it does something like shrinks the individual lots, but moves the excess land off into another,
Common area.
yeah.
What's the definition of a cluster housing? Is it like houses 50 feet apart, 100 feet apart?
I think it's basically what I was saying.
Wait a minute, stop. I don't mean to be rude or anything, but
Yeah.
you're disapproving a butter.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear what your disapproval is. We can't get into questions and answers
Okay.
without any kind of direction.
You're right, sorry.
Approval, I'm wondering where he's gonna build them. It's a pretty good-sized piece of land that goes like a L over to the wetlands, if you're coming off of 114. Which,
But presume that you disapprove. I would like from you to tell me why you disapprove.
I disapprove because the way it is, he's clearing a lot of land, and we can see in to these huge fields, if that's where he's gonna build these homes.
Okay, any questions?
I'll ask the same follow-up question, which is, the applicant is before us specifically today, not for permission to build. He's allowed to build as long as he does this then, but he specifically says, hey, I know I could build, according to the law, a bunch of, say, small shops for a plumber here and a carpenter there, but instead, I would like permission to build,
Yeah.
4 houses instead of 4 shops. Do you have thoughts on that?
I don't disapprove him building houses,
Okay.
residential.
Cool.
So basically, your disapproval is based on wetlands impact.
Quantity
And,
and where,
oh, and overcrowding.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. I
To me,
noted.
a cluster of single-family homes. How many is that? You can't answer that, and I,
Well, we can, because right
Right here
now
on
the
the plan.
conception is nine lots.
Yeah.
So there'd be 9 homes.
9 homes, okay.
Yep.
That's good to know.
But again, the permission that he's asking tonight is not to build 9 structures. It's to, I want those 9 structures to be houses, not shops. So that's really what we're
Yeah,
focusing on.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Even, yeah, the commercial, my house where I live is commercial.
Yep.
And I used to have to fill out a form every year to the town saying they give me permission to stay there, basically. But that's, I just wanted to know, because he's been out there clearing for years,
Right. Okay.
but,
Cool, thank you.
all right?
Thank you, yes. Any other disapproving of butters?
I guess I don't have too much to say, but I am Heidi Hamel. I'm the last house on the right on Renshaw. I can submit pictures later, but if I could just show them of what I dealt with for mowing my yard. And I'm not
These
even,
pictures would be evidence of what specifically? Of water runoff or?
the
okay,
water problem.
Great.
Yep.
Have you had it previously?
Yes, I've been there for 10 years.
Okay, so
And,
the water problem's been,
I can show you when I moved in 2015 to now, so, yes.
understood, but I guess the point I would make is that every year, the amount of water that we get is different. So if you've had it existing,
It wasn't until within the last 2 years of then previous opening, like Tiffany said, the roadways, removing trees and such.
and.
And same thing, the well problems, my well's in that area, and then this subdivision is now gonna be in the back of my house, so I have it in the front.
I can understand that as a concern, only from the standpoint of if you were here for the previous hearing that we had.
Yes, no, I was,
case,
yep.
I made a statement that I've never seen water in my backyard, but this year I have, and I'm
coming
up
upon.
on a hill.
Yep.
So,
No, understood, noted.
that one I would have
So that
a
is
hard time.
the basis of your disapproval is your
Yes.
concern with the wetlands impacting the water.
It's gonna come in my backyard now and my well, and it's in my front.
You're the last house on the right?
104?
Okay.
I've got the same follow-up question, presuming that by law he can put in 9 structures, and the question before us, or whatever the number is, the question before us, the board tonight, is, the zoning code says those have to be 9 plumbing shops and electricians and a body shop. Do you have an opinion on?
No commercial.
So you would prefer that it actually be residential?
I would prefer it not be either. And
but
I would
given that he
prefer
does-
it not be on
But-
Renshaw if it were
And
to happen.
that part everyone's saying, and I think
Yes.
we're all listening up here.
Yeah, no, that
So-
corner is absolutely
Right.
horrible, and the amount of young children on that road, no.
We understand.
Yeah.
And not to say
Yeah,
dismissively, just because you
yeah.
hold on a very
No,
good job
and
of
then,
explaining.
you're dealing with
Yeah.
septic, heating,
So-
people getting pellets delivered, you're having a lot of other commercial vehicles that are coming down that road.
So the question that we're trying to answer tonight is, right now the law says that he can put in 9 buildings, but they have to be small plumber shops and electrician shops. And he says, I'd rather put in 9 houses. What are your thoughts on that? Would houses be better or worse, or don't get?
Worse.
Okay, all right, we gotta stop with the speculation.
Worse.
I
Yeah.
wanna make sure you voice your concerns
Yeah.
and your disapproval.
Yes,
Have you done that?
I have,
Okay.
yes.
Let's
I
move
disapprove.
on, and I don't mean to be rude. Any other disapproving of butters?
How you doing? I live on Right One on 114, 665 South Stark Highway, and I technically have a problem with him being a developer, in period. Since you heard like how he cleared all the trees off the wetland, I don't know if it's been approved by town even clearing that, but again, I have a police report against him dumping garbage on my property. I have a recording of him doing so. Last year, he came in with an excavator and removed a bunch of trees from my property without anybody knowing about it. And he started basically from the back, so you can't see anything till it's too late, basically. So he literally cleared out a 20-foot path and my property is stretching 1,200 feet. So he literally removed a bunch of trees. Now it's actually swamping out, so, and he's not even getting a slap on the wrist. I filed a complaint with police, I made a police report, I filed to the town, nothing. So I have an issue, basically him being a developer there by himself, or not getting approved before he does things. So
All right.
that's about it, so.
Any questions to that one? No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any other disapproving abutters? Being none. Oh, one more.
My name is Lisa Baker. I live at 61 Renshaw Road. It's about 3 houses down from this access road. As everyone stated, the problem is, we're all wondering, is he allowed to do what he's already done? Since he has started that, we have all noticed significant amount of damage right at the wetlands, right at the curve of the road, since this has started.
Water damage?
Yes.
Okay.
The road's completely torn up, completely heaved, completely, like, almost undrivable, but it's a dead end, so, like, there's only one way out. So our kids are playing on the road, our kids are walking down the street from the road. At the end of the road, the bus picks up, there's the sharp turn, and children are walking down it. I don't feel it's fit for commercial or residential access off of that road for that very reason. I wanted to point out that it just seems he's doing things unethically and, you know, by deceit almost, because when he was given the lot access in 2019, I have the minutes, and it was specifically stated by his person, his surveyor. He stated, and I quote, he stated there will be no grading or change to the surface and no additional house height to get the approval for the lot access. Without that, he had no access because his access was all wetlands. So he, in my opinion, deceitfully gained this lot access, and he immediately went to work in getting the lots. He had it surveyed, and there are wetland markers. He has gone in and excavated the property up where those orange markers are. And like I said, since he's done that, it's very obviously tearing up the road. So those are my concerns, that, like, I don't think he's done things correctly, and I don't think he will continue to do things correctly. And so I don't think residential or commercial should be coming off of Renshaw.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And to piggyback that, he showed up uninvited on the back of our property survey.
Okay.
Out of scope of this meeting,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yes. Any other disapproving abutters?
I have a question. Can I speak on behalf of my neighbor who can't be here?
No, you may
we
not.
already heard that one first.
Sorry.
Okay.
Might as well. Jennifer Matlack, I'm on 97 Renshaw. And I basically am just supporting what they're saying. Access onto our road, I don't want the extra traffic, what that could bring just to road damage. And I know it's always been a water problem, but we have noticed significant. I'm flooding, I'm swamped. I've lost about 2/3 of one side of my yard. And I know this year's excessively rainy, but we've had some others. And I've usually dried out. The last couple of years, I don't. And I just see it maybe getting worse if we continue. And I just, yeah, access onto Renshaw, no. I don't want the extra traffic. It's not safe. I drive for a living. I can tell you that curve's not safe to have people come out and have to try and come onto the road. I've done bus driving for 20 years, and that would not be a safe place to come out. So I'm just supporting what everybody else is saying, that we're having a big problem with this.
Okay, great,
Thank you.
thanks. Any other disapproving abutters?
One more question or concern?
Okay, make it quick. I
it
don't mean to be
quick. You're
rude,
not
but
tired,
let's,
are you?
let's,
We're all
on the same boat.
That's not true. You get to go home after this. We have another case.
There you go. You get paid for it.
Anyway, what's your,
The question, the other concern is, if he was to gain access, get permission to go off of 114, where that road is, there's a slight turn, and the speed limit's 40, but people come down there 50, 60 miles an hour,
yep,
and I live a couple houses down, and I've had my mailbox taken out a couple times, stone wall ran into, through the guardrail, in the wintertime coming down that hill. So if it's a residential access there, even commercial, I think it's a hazard for who may have to go in and out of there.
From 114?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
Because of the traffic and the speed and all that crap.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other disapproving of butters? Being none. Boards, committees? Okay.
Well, we're not.
Members of the public?
No, you are. You're in a butter.
We, wait a minute, I want to be clear about something. We do say sometimes public at large, but you really should be in a butter.
He is.
Oh, you are in a butter?
No, there's another piece in between. We're the little square that's kind of isolated to Renshaw
When I
Road.
say public at large, it's a messy statement.
We are on Renshaw.
We're on Renshaw Road.
Have your statement, but be quick about it, please.
George Maloney, 76 Renshaw Road.
Okay?
To kind of echo what several of my neighbors have said, I don't really support 9 houses going into this area. Now, could that access be from 114? I wouldn't mind it
I
if
understand,
it stayed commercial property. I originally voted for the change in that ordinance because I knew that this project would be coming. I voted against, or I voted to have that change in the ordinance, to keep that or to restrict that to commercial property.
Okay, that's probably enough.
Okay, thank you.
I get what you're saying, and basically, let me paraphrase you. You concur with everybody else. You have anything else to add?
It very much seems to me, the way this whole process has gone, because this has been years and years and years, it's go out and do the work, and then come in and get the approval, which I think that's wrong.
Okay.
You should have your variance, you should have your plan, you should have that approved by the town, then go and do the work.
We're here for the variance.
I'd like to ask one
And
quick
I
follow-up.
duly, yes, go ahead.
You said that you voted for it, the warrant article that removed residential from the list of possible things. Briefly, so Malcolm doesn't kill me, can you explain what your thoughts were about why commercial is better than residential?
I don't want a whole bunch of Section 8 housing behind my property.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I know you're trying to limit to abutters. I have a very close property. I don't understand whether or not the water table will affect it. I was hoping I could speak.
In this case, I don't think I'm going to allow it, only because the water table issue has been addressed several times.
But I have other points I'd like to address with
Is
it
it-
being in proximity.
Is it relative, and is it,
Well, the concern, the first one here is, I don't think.
go ahead.
You wore him down.
Perfect. All right, Mike Jorgensen, General Knox Road. First point, I strongly believe that seeking a variance on this is improper. This needs to be changed on zoning from commercial to residence with a town vote, especially the way that this is being done. 75 acres switching over is an unknown number of properties. We have a informal draft here. We have no idea how many are actually going to be put, so we need to stop referring to it as 9 and start going 75 acres worth of dense.
That's enough detail. Your
I thought it was
opening
relevant.
sentence your opening sentence covered it.
Okay.
You have a problem with a commercial zone being switched to residential.
And not going through the town voting process. That's the issue.
Yes,
Not,
okay.
it shouldn't be a variance.
Okay, and that should be it.
Number two,
Thank you. You see what we're
okay,
getting at.
number two, if you put this kind of volume at either Renshaw or off of 114, people are going to die with the traffic. It is a danger, I cannot come up with a more dangerous
Okay.
spot in town on a curved downward embankment to put that kind of volume.
You're concerned with safety.
Yes.
How many others do you have? I was giving you 3 minutes. I don't mean to be
Well,
rude.
you keep taking up part of the 3 minutes.
Lastly, I will keep it to one last point. Lastly, we have talked about the spirit of the ordinance again and again, except it hasn't been brought up on this topic yet. And if we look at the ordinance itself, Article 24, it strictly says permitted under commercial zoning districts, 24.3 permitted uses, residential homes are not permitted, not being bolded and underlined. I think we very much know what the intended spirit of this was, and to say anything else is just lying.
That's the reason he's here for the variance. So you're kind of being redundant, okay? He's here to apply for a variance.
Yeah, but the
for
town
just that
spoke
reason.
when they put forward that measure. The town spoke, not respectfully 5 people behind a table. And to change that, the town should have to speak again. I ended at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate that point, okay? I do appreciate the point, and great. Thank you. Any other disapproving abutters?
You keep asking, you don't ask, you won't get them.
It's your opportunity. It's your opportunity to rebut anything that was said.
Mr. McKenzie, if you want to come back up.
Yep.
I think I've traveled that old farm road more than anybody here since we purchased it way back. Even when we did not own that so-called wetlands area off of Renshaw, there's 685 feet of frontage. We are at the opposite end, meaning the southerly end of the land we purchased on Renshaw, right next to the owner that we bought it from. I don't see Debbie here.
She's not.
But she would be the first one affected if there was a backup of water from anything that we did on our property to the old farm road.
Mr. McKenzie, I want to make it clear, it's not so-called wetlands. There are wetlands here. Based on your own rendition of where you want to put 9 houses, there's wetlands all around it. So it's not so-called wetlands. There are wetlands here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
The word of so-called would imply that they may or may not be there.
Well,
They
that-
are here,
that
per
old-
your own drawing.
yeah.
Right.
Since the 90s when we owned it, we traveled Renshaw right through to 114. And never have I been unable to drive through there. Never.
I don't think that's a question of
Well,
whether or not you can
but
drive through there or not.
I'm being accused of doing something to that entranceway that's harming other properties. And every day I could drive, just my vehicle, I have a Volvo, and I drive it from Renshaw through to 114, through the old farm road, or the reverse direction.
So
And
let me
never-
ask you a quick question. You have, I won't say accused, but it has been stated that you have cut down trees in a wetlands area. Yes or no?
No.
I think that's out of scope of what's before us.
No, because that was made a statement.
Okay.
He's refuting that.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to do it.
Okay.
That is one of my concerns. When you have an existing road, enough please, when you have an existing road, access road, whether or not it's up to code, doesn't matter, it's existing, it's pre-existing, I should say. But if it's through a wetlands, and you widen the road, you need a permit.
Yes.
And possibly a variance. Now, it's been stated, and I don't know what to think, that it's been widened. So that's a stick for me. But, moving on, we have the basis for the disapprovals was wetlands impact and water issues. Nobody had a problem with you using the property, but they were more interested about where the access was. How do you speak to that?
The use of the old farm road to get in and out?
And is that the one from 114?
No, from
The
Renshaw.
other one from Renshaw, okay.
Any day of the year, I could drive through there.
So I think the question we're interested in is not so much of, is it passable in a Volvo? The
Oh,
question is, hang on
absolutely.
just a second. The question is, a lot of people, like, the one unifying theme is, no one wants to see traffic go in from Renshaw. So I could imagine you saying, no, actually, it would be fine if traffic went in there. I could imagine you saying, I see your point. Maybe I'll try to get all traffic from 114, or I could imagine saying other things. So what are your thoughts with regard to that specific claim that they're asserting?
Every day of the year, during the weekdays, I could go in and out of that property. Every time, when I would leave exit onto 114 from the upper part of the property, around the corner, there could be a truck barreling down. The sight distance was done by Sanford Survey back in the 90s for the first residential subdivision. And they kept just a minimum sight distance for where that new road would serve the property. When I drive out there, there's a vehicle in back of me invariably every other day, want to come up right close to the
So
back.
you're basically saying the 114 option is not really a safe option?
It's not a safe option.
Okay.
Malcolm, I make a
Right.
motion to close testimony.
So noted. Do you have anything else to add? I think you've addressed the access issues to the best of your ability. There's nothing.
If you look on the soil maps that Sanford Survey did, you'll see that the old farm road entrance off of Renshaw is classified as Pitts gravel. Pitts gravel. And it's interesting, I dug some test holes for GSI engineering right here in Ware. Take some samples. And it is, you can dig down there in that section and it's gravel.
I don't think the condition of the road is in question.
Right.
It's what's going to happen when you need to widen that road to be compliant with the town regulations, and what will be impacted in that process. That's the concern that's being,
Yeah, Sanford flagged it for wetlands
Yeah.
in his survey, where the road would go.
Yeah.
There's a
Okay,
motion to
wait.
close testimony. I'd like to second that.
We've got a second. Can we have a vote?
No, I'm not calling you to a vote yet.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to paraphrase whatever you said and be done. I think you've pretty much covered every angle. And I don't want to be going on too far with this.
Yes.
Is there anything you need to add that hasn't already been discussed? Nothing new?
Oh, we donated some land.
Okay, that's not
To the
relevant to the
town.
variance. That's
To
not
the
relevant
town.
to the variance.
No, but so that the road could be,
Okay, I'm going to have
Prepared
to ask
better.
you to have a seat, sir.
but, yes, okay. Thank you.
Now I'm going to close this. It's closed. Anything, any,
We just closed, sorry. We had a hand raised in the audience.
Well, that's too
Yep,
bad.
ex-
I'm not a fan of spot zoning, I'll tell you that right now. But this is a pretty interesting situation. I don't see a conflict with with commercial.
And it says no, it says
we've
no,
had-
no residential in commercial zones, so
Right.
black and white says not.
But that's
And it says
point
it
two.
t's
We're
in
getting
there,
ahead of
too.
Yeah.
ourselves.
yeah, that's,
Okay, do I hear a motion on prong one?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
The public interest is more, they don't want it off Renshaw
Sorry.
and the wetland impact.
I agree with you. And just to make
the
it,
biggest thing.
make it formal, under Gravy, Cedel, would the variance cause a harm? There is an argument that one version of the variance would cause a harm, that if the variance did not have a restriction, thus allowing access from Renshaw. So I would suggest that we could plausibly, the only way I think that we could find for prong one, the public interest, is if we made the variance, if one were to be issued, conditional on there not being access from Renshaw.
Anything else?
And, but also, part of that, wouldn't that also go to the planning board of,
You speak on it.
Yes.
right, more of that?
Yep.
Where it goes in, where it's at, how
Yep.
much it is?
No, they certainly have powers there, but we also have some powers, so.
Yeah, this is where I'm gonna become Travis and say, we have to make our decisions here first.
Yep.
Yes,
Before it even
let's
goes to
focus
the
on-
planning.
Yep.
And, you know, my concern is that there would be a threat
I think they're.
to the public from the addition of minimum of 9 cars, and that's just a minimum. You know, on a road that I've been on, and it is a scary road for, you know, for a dead-end
Yeah.
road.
Yep.
So you're basically thinking contrary to the public interest.
Yes.
Any other discussion?
I think it's, on this particular point, it blurs point 1 and 2, so I'm trying to compartmentalize,
understand.
right? But I happen to agree that the public interest is explicit through a town vote into what the applied purpose of that is. So when it says is contrary to the public interest, it's noted that the public interest is to expand economic, promoting commercial endeavors and economic prosperity. So the intended, essentially repurposing of this, I'd say, is in contrast to the public interest, as so voted.
I tend to agree. Any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor?
No.
No?
No.
No.
And a no from me. Wrong one doesn't pass, 05. Describe how the spirit of the ordinance is observed. Do I
As I
hear a
just-
motion?
So moved.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded to approve prong 2. Any discussion?
So the
Just,
discussion,
the motion is just to open up, so now we here are allowed to discuss prong 2. So we're going through each of the prongs.
This is a closed deliberation. We've had all the public discussion earlier. This is a closed deliberation.
my only add to the prior statement would be, I think this is an opportunity for voting on rezoning as a potential avenue. It's not a candidate for variance, in my opinion, on this prong, in the spirit of the ordinance, as in contrast to Article 17, Article 24 is very explicit about what the spirit of the ordinance is. But with due respect to Mr. McKenzie, I think that would also open an opportunity for proper planning evaluation, since that seems to be such a concern as it relates to water,
I agree.
aquifers, traffic flow, et cetera.
I concur with that.
So I also agree that this is effectively an attempt at rezoning, and there's a process for that, and we should follow that process. But I also want to speak to spirit of the ordinance. And we know that the voters didn't sort of accidentally in 1986 happen to say no residential here. The voters just a few years ago, after debate, changed it, and we even heard about the fonts and the underline effects, et cetera. And I specifically want to guess or interpret what I think the spirit of the ordinance might be. So I've recently been doing, for State House reasons, a lot of spreadsheets showing what changes in population in a town will do to school usage, to tax levels, how existing taxpayers will see stuff change. And one thing that falls out of this is that towns very often try to plan things so that they bring in commercial. businesses. And the reason for this is someone moves in a $400,000 house, they pay taxes on $400,000. Someone moves into a $400,000 shop, they pay taxes on $400,000. But
Travis,
hang on.
I'm not sure that's relevant to this.
I think it is because it's about the spirit of the ordinance. But in one of those cases, in addition to paying $6,000 a year in taxes, they might then draw $50,000 a year by enrolling some kids in schools. So towns very rationally say, hey, let's have 70% residential, where people will pay taxes and have students in schools, and also let's make sure that we set aside some land for this lucrative commercial stuff that brings money into the coffers but doesn't create outflows. So the citizens have a right to do that sort of planning with the thought of, in future years what the revenue looks like, and I would assert that the citizens have done so with the warrant article a few years ago.
Okay. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor?
Now, is this a,
Excuse me, no.
is this a final vote?
No, sir, no, sir. This is a closed deliberation. We've done that.
If it is, I want to table it.
You will have a chance to appeal if you don't like the
You are not
outcome.
in a place to make a tabling motion.
No.
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 And a no from me. Prong 2 does not carry 05. Please describe how substantial justice is done. Do I hear a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded to approve prong 3. Is there any discussion? Being none? There's
I'll
no,
first.
okay. All those in favor?
No.
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 And a no from me. Prong 3 does not carry 0 to 5. Do I hear a motion to accept prong 4?
So moved.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded to accept prong 4. Is there any discussion?
I will say that the applicant, I believe, said that it would not, and none of the objecting abutters said otherwise, so the courts have said that that is sufficient to carry the case.
The only argument I would have for that is,
So I think that I will be voting yes, that their values of surrounding property are not diminished.
Okay. Any other discussion?
no.
I think that's compelling.
Agreed.
We don't have to be running a straight run here.
We have to vote on it, though.
No more discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any yes? Prong 4 carries 5-0. Do I hear a motion to accept prong 5 in its entirety?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept prong 5 in its entirety. Any discussion?
Surely, I would say that I don't see an unnecessary hardship because the opportunity to use it as a commercial lot remains.
Correct. I agree.
And it's been there since the 90s, so, and it's been land the whole time. There's no like rush.
Speak up, please.
Oh, sorry, I mean,
Into your mic.
yeah, it's been in there since the 90s and all land, so it hasn't been a rush to use it, so is it really a hardship if he hasn't used it? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but.
So some discussion I have is the applicant made a point, and it was understood and appreciated, that to come in and bulldoze it flat to put in a Home Depot or something would be very destructive, and uses that were not as destructive would be better, and that's a coherent point, and I follow it. But I would say that in Ware, we have lots and lots of small businesses tucked in on little 1 acre, lots and up winding ways. Pretty much every place I go, Country Three Corners is wedged into a weird place, Blackbird, et cetera. So I think that this land is in fact plausibly usable for commercial purposes.
Good point. I agree. They have other options.
Yep.
And again, I'm not a fan of spot zoning. Any other discussion?
I think the other part of it is too, is that when you look at 5II, the statement in there is the commercial use of the area of the proposed clustered, let me try this again. The commercial use of the area of the proposed cluster subdivision is unreasonable in that it would require extensive leveling of the land. The undulating mixed landscape does not lend itself to larger commercial structures. There's no hardship in that, okay.
Yep.
The lay of the land doesn't, it's no different than the lands that are around it.
Any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor?
No.
No?
No.
No.
And a no from me. Number 5 does not carry, 0 to 5. That's that for us here. You have other avenues, still check out those options.
So the variance was denied, you can,
Variance is denied. Well, you heard the discussion.
That was your final vote?
Yes, it was, sir.
I requested that it be tabled.
you're not in a
You
position
have
to
not-
request.
You don't have that. You can appeal, or you can go, you have, what, 30 days, I think. I wish you luck, sir.
Let the home buyers suffer.
Back with the hard copy.
With hard copy.
Thanks to Naomi.
Thank you for waiting, too.
I apologize for unforced error. Beautiful. As far as that goes. Thanks for.
There was no idle time. No worries.
That was convenient that you guys had that one to go to. Keep you busy. I just have to say, it's never happened that I've shown up for a ZBA hearing and have a room and a hallway full of people, and none of them are here for mine.
Okay, so let me just clarify. We've already approved the application. We hit the glitch with the permission, we got that. And we're moving ahead.
I have that you made a motion and then you had this big discussion, so there was no decision.
I
You made a
bel-
motion and said the application is complete, and then you got off on the other.
We
So you
never,
didn't
we
have
never
to take a
voted.
vote.
Yeah.
Yep, you are correct, thank you. No,
We
because
didn't
of
vote. Okay,
the
yeah.
glitch.
Because of the glitch.
Glitch, right.
Okay.
Let's take a vote.
We didn't vote to what?
We didn't
So-
vote to accept
So we
it.
didn't vote on the completeness of the application?
Yes, we did.
No.
Naomi is saying
No,
from the minutes that we didn't.
And I apologize because we accepted the application.
You made a motion and a second, you didn't finish, because then you get into the whole email exchange. and-
Ah, that makes sense. Because someone said, hey, I don't want to vote in favor of this
No, no,
because it's
you
missing
know
paper.
what? He is correct, Naomi, because he wouldn't have been able to be
Yeah,
speaking.
we accepted it.
He would not have been able to-
I'm not mistaken on this. I'm pretty sure we heard the application, we
Have a vote, so.
we voted, it was 5-0 to accept the application. Then I asked him up, and then I think, where's the permission? And we didn't have it.
I threw you under the bus, but I got you back.
Thank you. And I believe we voted to table it.
Yep, we
until we
did.
got the document.
Then we got it.
So now
So-
it's on the table.
I was about to say, I make a motion to remove it from the table.
Second.
Moved to second to remove it from the table.
Yes?
All those in favor?
Yes.
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 And yes, it's off the table. We're going forward now.
Thank you. Again, my name is Jason Reimers. I'm with BCM Environmental and Land Law. And I represent the landowner and applicant, Lori Willie. I was wrong, it was not. Like I said, Lori's not here tonight. I'm gonna make this as quick as I can. I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the home and the lot. The lot and the home are pre-existing legal, non-conforming prior to they existed prior to the enactment of the zoning ordinance. The home was built in 1968. We don't know when the deck was originally built, but it very well may have originally been built with the original house, or at least the original version of this deck, because there's a door that leads out to it. But in any event, we don't know exactly when it was built. But the deck fits in nicely with the design of the home. Lori's contractor estimated that the current version of the deck is 15 to 20 years old. There's some emails attached to the application. In one of them, the building inspector said, quote, "It's been there so long, I really don't see an issue," end quote. I can't explain why the deck was not reflected in the 2022 tax card, but is in the 2024 tax card. But again, I went out there today and had a look at it, and looking at the decking, it is not brand new, and the contractor didn't think so either. But I can't explain why it wasn't in the 2000.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
real quick? You mentioned a document that you read the inspector?
Yeah.
Referenced it?
Yes.
And what date was that?
And that was April 3rd, 2025.
Oh, okay. All
2
right.
months ago, the building inspector saying, "It's been there so long, I don't see it as an issue."
Okay, thank you.
So there's a photo showing that the deck was clearly not built after 2022. But I think that's beside the point. The deck is in disrepair and needs to be replaced. It's a 31 by 10-foot deck attached to the house, running the length of the house. The replacement deck will be the same dimensions within the exact same footprint. DES recognized that and issued a permit for the in-kind replacement for it. That's a shoreland permit, and that's included as Exhibit E in the variance. Before I go to the variance criteria, though, I think there's at least one reason why a variance isn't even required. First, I would go to the definition of building.
We caught that too.
Oh,
It doesn't have a roof.
right. Thank you. It's not a building. Therefore, it's not subject to 18.2.7's 50-foot setback. I wasn't involved with the email traffic between the town administrator, the building inspector, my partner, so that didn't come up.
The deck is not a building,
Correct.
but it's attached to a building,
It is.
meaning it's a part of that building.
I see that too.
And so, as a part of that building, it is what it is.
Maybe it's a structure, not a building.
Structure,
I-
same thing.
I hear-
Part of the structure,
Yeah,
okay.
it is. It's attached.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
It itself is not a building.
Right, I understand that.
So I'm giving you that argument because you could find under the exact wording of 18.2.7 that the deck doesn't require a variance.
Right.
Another reason is that Article 3.4 of the ordinance, which is called Rights of Vesting and Non-Conforming Use of the Property, states that this zoning ordinance shall not apply to any existing structures or to any existing use of any building in the town of Ware that was in existence on the date of the adoption of the zoning ordinance. This zoning ordinance shall apply to any alteration of a building for use, for a purpose, or in a manner which is substantially different from the use to which it was put before the alteration. And like I said, this lot was created and the house built long before the zoning ordinance. And Lori's replacement of her deck is an alteration of her home that is not substantially different from the deck before the proposed alteration. It's actually not different at all. So again, another reason that a variance is not required is that Article 3.4.1 plainly states that the zoning ordinance does not apply to this.
I agree with that from the standpoint if there's evidence that that deck existed at the time the house was built or prior to our ordinances going into place. However, there's no evidence to substantiate that. And as an attorney, you can appreciate that. We hear what you're saying, but we have to go by.
So what we're
I
gonna do is
understand.
assume that you need a variance and
Okay.
go ahead with the application.
Believe me, I wish I had a photo from 1970 showing that deck.
I wish I was too.
We all do.
Let me jump in for a second. So I read through the whole email trail, and there's discussion about the 50-foot front setback, as we well know, and the 25 sides and rear. Every deck definitionally projects not just, in the last 25 feet, but then projects out into the water. Is it our understanding that no new decks can be created in town and only old grandfathered ones exist? I've never dealt with a deck before in this.
No, it'd be the same thing. If you're going to put in a new one, you'd have to go for a variance.
And the other thing is deck versus dock. I'm sorry, I was
Right.
conflating the two. So this is a,
Let's,
it's a deck. Thank
Yeah, well, I think that gets us to why we're here, which is essentially, I'm proposing a deck.
Right.
you're proposing to replace an
Replacement of an
existing.
existing
Right,
deck.
right, but go, to Mr. Corcoran's point, like, if it was a new deck, we'd be going through the same process.
Okay,
Cool, thank
Article
you.
1.
Correct.
Variance will not be contrary.
So, the first two are considered together. The Supreme Court says that to answer these, it comes down to two questions, two different ways of looking at it. Would it, granting the variance, alter the essential character of the neighborhood, or would it threaten public health, safety, or welfare? And this, granting this variance would do neither. To look at the essential character of the neighborhood, you could look at what uses are allowed, and you can look at the uses that currently exist. Single-family homes and accessory decks are permitted by right. It's common for homes to have, in this district, the residential district, to have decks. It's been here for a long time, so rather than altering the character of the neighborhood, the deck is part of the character of the neighborhood, and replacing it on the same footprint won't change a thing about the neighborhood. Removing the deck would be more of a change to the neighborhood than replacing it. As for public health, safety, or welfare, there's nothing about a replacement deck that poses a threat to the public in any way, and I won't belabor that point. So in sum, the variance satisfies the first two criteria because it will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten public health, safety, or welfare. And I do want to just point, I'm trying to get through this as quickly as possible, but I don't want to get denied and realize, oh, I was, for the sake of getting through things, I cut out an argument.
You have the reins, as long
Thanks.
as, we don't get irrelevant.
I'm going to stay relevant.
Okay.
Thank you. The third criteria, substantial justice. The Supreme Court has stated that the guiding rule on this standard is that any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. Denying this variance will cause an injustice to Ms. Willie, because there would be a tremendous loss to her if it's denied with no benefit to the general public. She's invested more than $500,000 in this home. The deck was an important feature when she went and looked at the home. She could have bought another property elsewhere, but the deck was a big selling point. It's a place for her to relax and for her to meet and hang out with her son and daughter-in-law, who they kind of live equidistant apart. This is a perfect meeting spot.
So she bought this recently?
2024, yes.
224, okay, and the deck was already there?
Yes.
Okay.
Photos in the real estate listing show the deck. Selling point, yeah, it was there.
Thank you.
The home already had a deck. There was no reason that she should have ever thought that she could not keep it and maintain it as necessary. Like I said, the deck is deteriorating and becoming unsafe, so it would be a personal and financial hardship if the deck is not replaced, and the general public would not gain anything if the variance is denied. And replacing the deck with a safer, new deck will have no bad effect on the general public at all. So substantial justice would be done. The balancing test weighs in the applicant's favor. Property values. There's nothing to suggest that the value of the neighboring properties will be diminished by the replacement and improvement of the deck. No one's here to argue that that's the case. Like I said, the deck's going to be on the exact same footprint. It will not be any different to the neighbors than it is now, except it's going to be a new deck that's not falling apart. So satisfies the fourth criterion. Finally, unnecessary hardship. And a literal, I would say a literal application of the ordinance means that no variance is required, but the unnecessary hardship element is satisfied when special conditions of the property result in there being no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property, and the proposed use is a reasonable one. Special conditions of the property include the following. The property is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. The property has a single-family home that was built in 1968, and it was built in a particular part of the lot, close to the lake. It wasn't built closer to the road to allow more space, so she's stuck with where the home is on the lot. Another special condition is that the deck has existed in this same location for a long time and become an integral part of this house. The back door of the house is oriented to open onto the deck, and the lot is only 60 feet wide, and there's the tax map attached to the application shows that this is a narrower lot than a lot of the other lots in the neighborhood, which means that she can't replace this deck with a deck on either side. It's 60 feet at the front, 60 feet at the road, 60 feet at the lake, and about 85 feet on the side lines. So this is a narrow lot. And the last special condition is that the deck is in the back of the house, screened by trees and vegetation, so that you really don't see it from neighboring properties. Second part of the unnecessary hardship test is whether there is a fair and substantial relationship between the ordinance provision 18.2.7, which is the 50-foot setback from wetlands, and applying it to this property. And in other words, would denying the variance further the purpose of that prohibition? And the answer is no, because the house has existed, and the deck, well, the house has existed long before Article 18.2.7 came into existence, and it seems like the deck has been there for the same amount of time, or at least a very long time. DES has recognized that it's not going to have a bad effect on the lake, and so there's no fair and substantial relationship between applying that 50-foot setback to this existing deck. And finally, the proposed use is reasonable. I've said it before. The decks are common, decks on a lake. I'm standing on the deck looking across, that person's got a deck, that person's got a deck. Well, that person doesn't, but they've got a little sitting area. That's what people like. So it's a reasonable accessory use to a lakeside home. So in sum, denying the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship, and the applicant satisfies all 5 variance criteria, so I respectfully request that you grant the variance. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions that I know the answers
Just
to.
gonna say that. Any questions?
None.
Thank you, the applicant. Okay. Have a seat and we'll deal with the disapproving of butters. Are there any disapproving, approving, public at large, boards and committees? Being none, would you like to rebut that?
They're correct.
Okay.
I just want to point out, he's here, he's a legal intern
Okay.
with our office. We're not trying to over-lawyer this.
Great.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have got no rebuttal. We're gonna close this to deliberate. It's closed deliberation now. Do I hear a motion to accept prong 1?
I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept prong 1. Any discussion? Being none. Those in favor?
Yes.
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 Prong 1, yes. Prong 1 passes 5-0. Do I hear a motion for prong 2?
So moved.
Seconded?
To approve prong 2, yes. Moved and seconded to approve prong 2. Any discussion?
A little bit. First, it doesn't fit crisply in a prong, but I do want to go on record as saying that I see no reason not to think that the deck existed at the time that the zoning code was adopted, so it's grandfathered. There was discussion about what is the default assumption and who bears the burden of proof on that. I do not know that the applicant bears the burden. It seems quite plausible to me that the deck was there. I've heard no one say otherwise. So, you know, I suggest that we probably don't even need a variance, but we're doing the process, so that's good. The second thing I wanted to say is a case that is near and dear to my heart and that I've argued before, on the other side, Maureen Bacon v. Town of Enfield. While a single project like this might not greatly affect the neighborhood, what would the cumulative impact of many such projects be? And I would say that in this case, the cumulative impact, if every single person had a deck, would still be fine. I argue it on the other side, so I want to, argue it here, that,
Okay.
decks on lake houses are fine.
Cool. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
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 And a yes. Prong 2 passes 5-0. Do I hear a motion to accept prong 3?
So moved.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded to accept prong 3. Is there any discussion?
Very briefly, the variance might be illegal if the use is inconsistent with the area's present use. This is deeply, perfectly consistent with the area's present use. That's Malachi Glenn Associates v. Town of Chichester. The end.
And I think the other part of
That's
that too
good.
is that
That's
the materials being used are, be safer, last longer.
Yeah.
So there's less chance of anything
I would
affecting the.
just add, this is the substantial justice part. I'd say, well, look, the deck was pre-existing. And there's discussion about not even needing a variance, but I think we did. But, no, substantial justice would be done because it's really a pre-existing.
It's there, all you're doing is replacing it.
Yet another.
It's not, they're not enlarging it, they're not doing anything other than replacing it.
Yet another argument is that no variance or building permit is required for ongoing maintenance, so the applicant could ship a Theseus style, just replace one board a day, and so.
Give me an idea. All right. Is that it? All those in favor?
Yes.
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 Yes. Prong 3 passes 5-0. Prong 4, we hear a motion to accept prong 4.
So moved.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded. Any discussions? Being none, all those in favor?
Yes.
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 And a yes from me, prong 4 passes 5-0. Do I hear a motion to approve prong 5 in its entirety?
So moved.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded. To accept prong 5 in its entirety. Any discussion? Being none, those in favor?
Yes.
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 And a yes from me. Prong 5 passes in its entirety, 5-0. You have your variance, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting.
Good news for your client.
Thank you for being patient with the letter.
Thank you for pulling that off.
I learn something every time. I was telling Christian, I said, new protocol, whether the rules require it or not. Just bring a letter.
Belt and suspenders.
We have some meeting minutes. Do you guys want to do that, or bump them down the road?
Well, I might not.
It's up to you. I've gone through them.
No. I can't spell for crap, so I never have corrections. If I touched it, it would get more.
Material changes then.
No.
So,
If I even read it, typos might pop into it, so.
We gonna do this then?
Would you like to do them, or move to put them down the road?
I move to defer.
We have the time to do that, Naomi? Okay, yeah. It's been moved and, has it been seconded to put these in the next meeting?
You may, I don't have any applications yet, so you may not have a July meeting.
Pardon?
I don't have any applications, the deadline is Monday, you may not have a July meeting.
we'll be out of compliance if we go out too much.
Okay, guys.
If you want to do it, do it.
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
Let's do it. This one's not too long.
Taking
We'll
your
get it
motion
done.
off the table?
Denied, Travis,
Yeah.
denied.
Take your motion off the table?
I do.
Okay, good.
Line 14, Christine, it should be Pinard instead of Picard.
Good catch. Line 14, N for C.
I won't get picky on the other one. Line 119, the owners, after watching the video of the movie, should probably be meeting. Although sometimes, it is a production.
See, you'd strike of the movie out.
You don't have any, sorry,
Watching the video, yeah, that's fine.
you don't have anybody watching.
Striking of the video out, of the movie, I mean.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, line 124, granting the rehearing on the motion, not notion.
Oh, yeah.
And then 126, of rehearing this case. I don't think it was vote. That's what I got.
Of rehearing, so you just scratched this vote,
Okay.
right? Chair, I'd ask for all those in favor of rehearing. Scratch this vote. Anything else? Anybody else? A motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Moved.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded to accept the minutes as amended for April 1st, 2025. Discussion. Being none, those in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Minutes are finalized, 5-0. I think we have one last thing to do.
Motion to
Motion
adjourn?
adjourned.
Move to
Seconded?
adjourn, seconded. Discussion?
Yes.
All those in
Yes.
favor? Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes, yes.
Okay. Meeting has been adjourned at 10:19.